Is that today? May 17th, 2012. If it's okay, we're going to do Appeal 2880. Are they here? Okay. We're gonna do you first, only because the tower, and they've agreed to it, that they may take a little bit longer. So, and we only have two tonight. So if you're ready,
that's fine with us. We're okay to wait if they'd rather go first. But
come on up. Come on down. Appeal 2880, the applicant Kevin and Renee Greery, property located at 4 Blackfriar Road, Rosemont, Pennsylvania, and zoned R4. Residential. Applicant seeks relief from Section 28030 to allow an addition to their existing residence, which will encroach into the required front yard setback. Excuse me. Take these in case you have to talk. You have to turn them on. Thank you very much. I don't know. Is the buttons on?
Try them out.
give it a shot. Sure. I'll give you my card as well. For the record, I'm Amy Farrell with Kaplan Stewart. We're the attorneys for Kevin and Renee Geary in connection with tonight's application. As the chairman correctly pointed out, the Gearys are the owners of a single-family residence that's located at 4 Blackfriar Road in Radnor Township. We're here this evening seeking zoning approval for a minor encroachment in the front yard setback to permit the Gearys to construct a small two-story addition on the front of their home. I have with me tonight Mr. and Mrs. Geary, who both will be giving a brief bit of testimony. So my suggestion would be that we let them both testify, and then I'm sure the board may have some questions. I think their testimony will overlap a bit, so it may make sense to let them both go and then ask those questions. Before I call Mr. Geary to start, I would like to just summarize briefly the relief that we're requesting. Excuse me one sec here. The property is in the R4 residential district, and it's non-conforming to quite a few existing code provisions. Existing nonconformities will not be increased in any way as a result of this application, and in fact, the impervious coverage nonconformity will be reduced slightly. The property is non-conforming with respect to lot area. There's approximately 5,824 square feet of lot area, where the code would require 7,000. It is also non-conforming with respect to one of the two side yards. 12 feet minimum are required, and one of the side yards currently is 11.12 feet. It's also non-conforming with respect to the total side yard. The code would require 30 total feet between the two side yards, and there's approximately 29 feet. And finally, it's with respect to yards, it is also non-conforming with respect to the rear yard. 25 feet is provided where 30 would be required. And as I indicated earlier on, it is also non-conforming with respect to impervious coverage. There's a 47% existing impervious on the lot, where the code permits a maximum of 40%. That is the nonconformity that would be reduced slightly as a result of this application. What the Gearys are proposing is in exchange for an addition at the front of the home, they would be removing a portion of an existing asphalt driveway to offset that impervious. So there would be about a 1% actual reduction in overall impervious. Generally, what you're going to hear from the Gearys is that they require a small addition to their existing home, which is already tightly constrained, as you can imagine, by the existing lot, the configuration of the side and rear yard setbacks. They need just a little more space to modernize what's a relatively small house by modern standards. They have a growing family, and they need a little more space to accommodate that family. So they've looked at alternatives for where to locate this addition, and as you'll hear directly from them in a moment, anywhere else that they could put this addition on the lot would result in even greater zoning issues with respect to the existing nonconformities. It also, if it was placed in a side or a rear yard, would force the home that much closer to neighbors. So the front yard really becomes the location where they can encroach as little as possible under the current zoning standards, not come up against their neighbors to any great degree. And finally, as you'll see, we have some photographs, and Mr. Geary will testify with respect to some of the surrounding properties which have similar additions and porches and other configurations, so that an addition off the front of this home, given that it is as small as is being proposed, we feel is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood.
Ms. Farrell, a couple of questions,
Sure.
if I could. First, my understanding is the only relief you require is from the front yard setback.
That's correct.
Everything else is either a protected nonconformity, the impervious will reduce by, I believe it's 1%, but you don't need relief anywhere else.
That's right. We would have had they decided to put the addition in any other location, but this allows them to request relief only with respect to that front yard setback.
Second, have the neighbors been approached on this?
They have been, and Mrs. Geary will testify to that specifically. They've had conversations with the neighbors on each side of them, and all three of the neighbors directly across the street from them, and all of them have signed on and have no issues with the application.
Do you have the inside design of the extension?
No, they have not done they haven't spent the money, quite frankly, to design the interior layout. They can speak generally to what it is that they're anticipating. It will be in terms of the layout of the first and second floor, as well as the materials for the addition. But they have not actually gone that further step until they see whether they're going to get the zoning relief. And unless there are any other immediate questions, I'll go ahead and call Mr. Geary. Did you want to swear them both, since they're both going to be?
If you'll both raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm this testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth? I do. And state your names one at a time, please.
Kevin Geary, Geary.
Renee Geary. Renae.
And Mr. Geary, you're the owner of the property at 4 Blackfriar Road, correct?
Correct.
And for how long have you owned that property?
Since January of 2007.
Do you and your family live at the property?
We do.
And approximately how many square feet of living space do you have on the first and second floor of the home today?
It's about 975, 900 per floor, so just under around 1,900 total square feet on the first 2 floors.
Okay. And the addition that you're proposing, can you describe just generally for the board the approximate footprint and general layout of it?
It would be a 15 by 16 foot addition, 15 feet off of the house toward the street, 16 feet from the edge of the house to the center, approximately, I believe, 240 square feet on each floor. It would be a 2-story addition. The main point of the addition is we're expecting our 3rd child. We're looking to have a 4th bedroom and also create a little bit more livable space in the first floor.
And you understand, as I indicated to the board, that as a result of the location that you've determined to place the addition, that you do need some relief from the zoning code.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the plot plan and look at the house, you realize pretty quickly there's not a lot of options for this lot. Our rear yard setback is somewhere probably right in the middle of our oven range. The side yard to the right of the house, if you're looking at the house, is already at the setback. There's only a couple of feet off of the left-hand side, and the only place to go is the front yard. With a mere 7.5 feet available to us without seeking a variance, it doesn't really provide a lot of options for the second floor in particular, which is the biggest concern for us for the bedroom. It really would allow us to create a really neat little bowling alley with only a 7 feet by 15 feet sort of addition off of the front.
So by increasing beyond the 7 feet that would be permitted under the code by an additional approximately 7 feet, 7.5 feet, that allows you to actually make a space that's usable as part of the addition?
It allows us to create a 4th bedroom. That 4th bedroom is still accessed through a 3rd bedroom, and it allows us a little bit more living and storage space. The houses are great. They don't have a tremendous amount of storage space in them.
Okay.
Real quick, you're not planning on doing any reconfiguration of the second floor?
The addition, if you look right here, there is a bedroom that is currently right there. And so it would just be an addition off of that. And so the 4th bedroom would be still accessed through the 3rd bedroom.
Okay. But have you given any consideration to reconfiguring walls upstairs? Just to have you considered it?
There's really not a lot of options, honestly. It would be breaking down a lot of walls. And to use the phrase, the juice really isn't worth the squeeze with how much we have to sort of break down to sort of get it.
And where would the door be, the front door?
The front door would be, there's a concrete walk that currently goes up here.
Yep.
And then goes into our front door. The front door would be accessed now off
Facing
of.
our driveway.
Facing our driveway as opposed to facing.
Gotcha.
The
Okay.
main.
Mr. Chairman, before we go further, we might want to label some
Well, that's
exhibits.
just what I was going to say. I just said that. I was
We were
waiting for
just
him to
having
finish
that
speaking
conversation.
Before I jumped in.
Okay.
Okay. Why don't we label these? Okay.
How about, we have the application, and the deeds are exhibits to the application. Maybe we make that all A1?
Yeah, we'll do that instead of having 100. Right, so the packet, which is Exhibit A that you have, will make it A1.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
the folder
so,
you handed in, you have Exhibit A, we'll call that A1.
The-
Okay?
wait, I'm sorry.
The Exhibit B,
Well, I thought A1 was going to include the application and the exhibits, which are exhibits of the application. We could make
Okay.
Exhibit A A2 if you want, and Exhibit...
no, it's fine. All right, in other words, all the exhibits are going to be A1.
okay, so A1 is the application with exhibits, just so
Okay.
I'm following.
Well,
along.
except
Okay.
you haven't
Except
got
the
any...
drawings. I want a
The
number of
drawing
drawings.
is Exhibit... oh, wait, you have Exhibit C. Oh, wait, they have a lot of... I'm sorry, I didn't see they had more photographs. Maybe we ought to make Exhibit B A2, Exhibit C A3, which would pick up... I mean, if you make Exhibit A...
Okay, yeah, that's what I started to do.
Yeah.
Exhibit A is going to be A1. Exhibit B is going to be A2.
Oh, I thought the application was going to be
No,
A1.
well, whatever she has, let's do it that way, because it's already
Okay,
in one
A1.
folder, so I think it'll make it easier instead of trying to break it out. So everything, it's A1, which is the application, and your
Picks up the plans,
definition.
too.
All right, the deed
Yeah.
is Exhibit B, which you're going to call A2.
Okay.
Then you have your drawing, your one drawing, we're going to call that A3.
Okay.
Okay, and the pictures you just put up, you just gave us,
Well, I will tell you, there were photographs that were included with the application.
that we're calling, right,
Those can be A4.
A4.
The ones that I handed you have a little more, they're
We'll call
additional
them A5.
photographs, right?
Actually, I've lost track.
Okay,
The
all right, there
appli-
it is.
Application.
In other words, the application, which is Exhibit A, in
With
the package
Exhibit
she
A.
sent, right, is A1.
Okay.
Exhibit B in her packet, which is basically the deed, okay,
Now, that's
is
Exhibit
A2.
A. That's the deed.
That's Exhibit B. Well, I'm...
If you look at
I'm
their-
assuming the tab is what's on top.
No, I think the
No,
tab is
it's
to
what-
the...
it's
the
what
other.
behind, right.
Right,
right
So
so-
I think, so,
This
let
is
me
too
try.
confusing. It's not-
Yeah, let's give you...
The application is A1.
So
Okay.
The
A1
deed
is,
is A2.
Yep,
The drawing is A3.
yep.
The first group of pictures is A5, and then A4, and the next group is A5.
right, so the set of photographs that I just handed you tonight.
gonna be
That are the
A5.
two 8.5 by 11 sheets are A5.
A5.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay? That way it's less confusing.
And by less confusing, I think we mean more, but
No, we got there.
I think we got it, right? We're good.
Did you ever think about changing it a little longer along the front wall rather than coming to the...
The issue that we find with taking it longer is length is not our problem. I mean, we could make it as long as the house, 30 feet, but it's really the width. It's out toward the street.
Next door,
6.
number 6.
Yep.
He's 26.43. Why can't you be on that line? That way, everybody's the same, because one of your arguments is people around you have the same thing done.
You know, it would be an option. It doesn't give us the flexibility, the
I
total
understand.
flexibility we're looking for.
I understand that. But I think that looking down the street, it's not going to look like a gear back and forth. You might want to, you might make it, you're going to lose a couple feet, but maybe just make it a little bit wider as opposed to depth. But then it would be symmetrical as you look down the street, because from the picture, the other picture here, the house to your right, okay, doesn't have that.
Doesn't have what?
Doesn't have the extension out front. At least it didn't. At least from the picture, it
not
didn't
sure
look
what
like it. And again, I could
I'm-
be wrong.
What picture are you referring to?
The picture in A4.
So the photographs that were attached to the
Right.
application.
It doesn't look like the house. It looks like it might be a little screen porch, which is the same kind of thing you have. The first picture, A4, the house on the right doesn't look like it has that build-out like your house
It does not.
has.
It does not. It's got a
Right.
screen porch. It's approximately
Right.
8 to 10 feet
Right.
off.
So the only house that has similar to what you want is to your left, okay? And he's at 2643, and you're at 22, whatever,
So it's a
2248. So I guess we're looking at, 4 feet.
Yeah.
That's how I'm looking at it. Again, I'm talking for me. Brad, you see what I'm talking about?
Yep. The third picture in A4 is the house on the left, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And while we're doing that, just to give the board, I think, some better context, we did add some additional photographs. I handed up the ones that we have marked as A5. Those are photographs of the immediate surroundings of the Geary house, and I'll ask them to walk you through those quickly. I'm also going to hand up now what we'll mark as A6, which are additional photographs of the surrounding neighborhood.
Do you intend to do the same style as this, on the left-hand side, pitched roof cutting into your existing roof?
Yeah, when we've talked to our contractors, they really believe that that's the only option. I don't think that we would look to do it entirely 100% in her style. The windows don't seem to match the rest of the house.
Right.
The pitch is a little...
But the look, it's going to have the similar look?
Yes.
Okay. And do you happen to know, counsel, where, if a variance was given for this house?
We
And when?
don't know.
We-
It's our understanding that it was constructed over 30 years ago.
Wow, okay.
Right. It was 30 years
Doesn't
ago
look
when
like it's 30 years.
I submitted a right-to-know request, and nothing sort of popped up
Okay.
in that. Our neighbor, it's
Looks
still...
good for 30 years.
It's still the
Yeah.
neighbor who owned it, who built it. She said that everything was sort of done in agreement.
Yeah, okay.
So.
Different code, probably.
there-
Right, my
wasn't-
suspicion is it was before these code requirements.
Okay.
You know, if you look at some of the photos, especially the ones sort of in the back,
Kevin, just so so the record is clear, as you're referencing the photos for the board, if you can identify if you're talking about A5 or A6, and then which photograph you are.
I'm going to go to A5 in the top left-hand corner. That's our backyard. And it really, as you can see, there's not a lot of options there. Top right, again, is another view of the backyard. The bottom left and bottom right on A5, those are our two side yards. The one on the right is the side of the property that goes to Blackfriar Road. And you can see there, with the fence as almost using as the boundary line, there's no options there. There's only 2 or 3 feet going on the driveway side. And even if we were to request relief there, that doesn't actually kind of get us our 4th bedroom. It makes the master bed. Then we really would be knocking down a ton of walls to sort of reconfigure the inside. So as we looked at this from all potential options, even, as crazy as it sounds, looking a building up, which would be completely out of character with what the neighborhood is, this is really the only option that we can find that keeps within the spirit of the neighborhood, modernizes the house for a growing family the way that we're looking to do, and accomplishes, the flexibility that we want to have moving forward. Our goal is to make this, our house from here on in.
Okay. And can you just quickly, turning to the A6 photos, can you walk the board just generally through some of the surrounding properties?
So in the top left of A6, that's our house to the far right here. The house immediately 6 Blackfriar that has the A-frame out front is to the left, and then it's various views of that 6 Blackfriar Road property. Again, as you talked about keeping it in style, if you notice that there's 3 windows up top, 5 down below, there's a window up top, we would not look to do it sort of in that style. We would look to sort of make it consistent with what the style of home that we have.
And then the second page as well, please.
Do you have something to say?
No, I was going to turn it for you.
The second page is 3 other properties sort of on our block that show existing sort of front porches coming off of it. And this is all, the one I'm pointing to here in the bottom left is directly across from our house. The other 2 are further down the street on Blackfriar.
Did you also consider whether or not you could or should put a larger addition on than you're proposing?
Of course. I mean, we looked at it, and we didn't feel it would be sort of keeping within the spirit of the neighborhood, or it would be beyond what we need. What we need here is a fourth bedroom and some more space on the ground floor and nothing more. We're not looking to sort of do anything that is, massive beyond scope within this neighborhood.
And as I indicated earlier, in connection with the application, you're proposing, should the addition be approved, that you would be removing a portion of the asphalt driveway. Can you just show the board generally where that is?
When we did the survey, it came as no surprise to us that our impervious coverage was probably beyond what code was. My guess was 48. It came back at 47. We have a very long driveway. I kind of didn't understand why, when they built these houses in the 50s, they felt like everyone was going to have 7 cars in this neighborhood. But we would be removing a portion of the driveway to actually lessen our impervious coverage. If you look at it currently, where there is this a pretty solid walkway and also our sort of landing here on the front door, so that little bit of area that we're taking up lessens the impervious coverage by 1, and we felt it was a good faith effort to try and lessen the impervious coverage as we made this addition.
Okay. And I know you've been addressing Mr. Craig's questions with respect to sort of the massing and the overall layout of the addition. Have you also given any thought to the materials for the exterior materials for the addition?
We have. If you look at some of the photos, and they may be hard to tell, I could pass around my iPad. It's got greater detail. When our neighbor matched her brick 30 years ago, it still didn't look like it matched. And we'd be looking to sort of do a paintable siding in this. The 2 estimates that we've gotten, both people felt that matching 60-year-old brick would be very difficult and potentially could stand out more. And we have, if you see throughout our house, 2 additional areas with alternative siding from the brick.
And is your intention also then to match the existing windows and the shutters on the rest of the home? Okay. And have you given any thought to landscaping along the front of the addition?
We have. I think if you notice in these other photos that have sort of front yard areas, we would be looking to soften the look of the addition by front yard landscaping.
Okay. Those are all the immediate questions that I have for Mr. Geary. I was going to have Ms. Geary discuss the conversations with the neighbors, unless you have any other immediate questions for him, or we can hold them till the end. Your call.
No, you have any questions? Okay.
Okay. And Ms. Geary, you also live at the property, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And you've heard all of your husband's testimony tonight. Did you agree with everything that he said?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And I'm going to hand up to the board, I think we're at A7, right?
Thank you. Was this the original? The original should go to the board chair, and I'm relegated to a copy.
And Ms. Geary, I indicated earlier that you had had some conversations with your surrounding neighbors. And I've just handed up to the board what we've marked as A7, which is I'm going to hand you a copy as well so you have it. A petition, for lack of a better word, that you prepared and that was signed by your neighbors. Could you just explain to the board who you spoke with in the conversations that you had?
Yes, we went to the neighbors' houses and chatted with them about our plan. We went to our neighbors immediately to our left and right, and the 3 neighbors across the street from us, the ones that are as close to us as any other neighbor. And we brought along the plans from the survey and showed them what our hope was for the addition, and explained, that we would keep in style with, the houses in the neighborhood. We would do landscaping around the front. And all the neighbors supported us, as you can see, their signatures are here. And they really felt as though they wanted us to stay in the neighborhood, and they thought if this helps you stay, that was good. We're pretty, active members of our neighborhood. We help with the block party every year. We organize different other events for the different adults in the neighborhood per month. And we really love our neighborhood. So it's a very friendly community, a great place to raise kids. I think there's about 25 children under the age of 8 on our block. So we really would like to stay there to raise our family. And we discussed it with other neighbors in the neighborhood also on different blocks and on our block, not to the extent of showing them a plan. But most of the neighbors, I mean, all the neighbors I spoke to, supported us in our plan.
Nobody gave you any indication that they had any concerns?
No, they didn't.
Okay. I'll take that one back. Those were all the questions that I had. I suspect the board may have some additional questions.
Noah?
Before we ask questions, is anyone here on account of this application in the audience?
Let's do them and then we'll.
Well, no, I've just, because I wanted to see, that we can just take this then as fact that nobody is objecting. You know, if everyone signed this and there's no one here,
Right.
then at least we can assume that
Right.
there's no objection among immediate neighbors. No, I really don't have any questions.
You have no questions? I thought you looked different tonight. Brad, do you have any questions? Cora?
I still want to find out how far you can go back towards the, the baseline, rather than 7 feet intrusion, maybe make it like 4 feet or somewhere in that area.
Obviously, we want to do what's right by our family, our growing family. And, we've got 2 young boys, potentially a third on the way, who knows? And we're just looking for a little bit more space. I understand the concern. It'd be something we'd have to sort of weigh. Feet don't come very easy in this neighborhood,
As the chairman already said, want to have a uniform, at least look-alike homes around. Not that the design, everything should be similar, but at least, they shouldn't say it is protruding to the front yard, too much. Okay, we understand your, concern.
This board's job is to give the least amount of relief based on hardship. Okay, and any self-inflicted nonconformities you have are kind of like because of the way the house is laid out and other things that's not areas that we can concern ourselves with. So we have to look at each case individually as to what relief, if any, we can give, and we're not obligated to give any relief, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at that. So, the way we say is, do you have, first we have to weigh is there a hardship here? Because that's the key that allows us to give any kind of relief. And then what's the minimum? It's not a maximum amount of relief, but the minimum amount of relief that we can give based on the hardship that you tell us you have.
And we can't consider self-imposed hardships.
Understood.
Having a lot of kids and grandkids, I will not say the kids are a hardship, but if that's your reason, that's certainly as self-imposed as it gets.
Understood. The hardship we feel is that the options here are limited. And, we do love our neighborhood. One of the reasons we chose to make this where we started our family and where we want to continue to raise our family. It's a great neighborhood. It's a great community. It's fantastic schools.
Can you
I
give
guess
us-
One wonders what will happen if you decide to have 3 more kids. So are you gonna,
And we're not gonna go
everyone
further.
could come in and say, I've had more kids and I'd like to make my house bigger. This is the one yard that you're
We have any
complying with.
potential, yeah.
But this is the one that's in compliance. All the others are out of compliance.
Right.
You're not doing anything wrong, obviously. They're
Right.
legally non-conforming. But it's the one, and that's the most important one. It's the one that's out front that everyone
Right.
sees.
Mr. Gary, are all the lots in this stretch of the street, Blackfriar, are they the same size, or is yours smaller or larger than the others?
Ours is a little bit smaller than most. Some run the gamut of 7,100, 7,200 feet. We actually, looked at buying a property at the end of the street because it had more space. If we had bought it, we'd be here still looking for a variance as well. We are one of the smaller lots, but I wouldn't put it beyond the margin of error on it. It's really the corner lots tend to have the bigger land plots.
Yeah, but then they have 2 front yards.
That would be what we would be,
Right, so they have,
you know, asking
that's,
for if
that
we
was the
bought
flip side
house.
of that
So-
house, was that it had a different issue. If you can give us 1 minute, maybe we can do a little bit of math and then see
Yeah,
what
it would-
will work.
Little math would help.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I just, excuse me for a second?
Yes, we should. We'll wait, yep.
We'll wait for him.
Okay. Oh, we gotta wait for John.
Yeah. All the important guys are gone. Come on, we gotta wait.
Oh, yeah, it looks tiny when you look at it on the acreage number.
I was just saying, I didn't even realize like how much acreage we had in the papers. It said like .0, and I'm like, oh gosh.
Yeah, I don't.
You know?
It sounds tiny. Although we have our house on it.
It's like you know the law 4 days later. Like, because you're like,
Yeah.
yesterday, so he's like, "Hey, Kevin, is it coming across?" I'm like, he did. It was Saturday or Sunday, yeah.
I'm not sure we take it. Sorry, we should have caught this earlier. We were holding the guys all up.
Yeah, Right, right, right.
It's not going to be straight 100%.
Right. Right.
Okay? Ready? All right, good. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you,
Sorry
gentlemen.
for the delay.
Not a problem. So we've talked it over, and the general feeling, obviously, is that if the inclination is that this will only be approved if they agree to go back 4 feet, then that's obviously what they would be willing to do. However, if we could strike a compromise where they're going back 3 feet, I know 1 foot doesn't seem like a lot, but it gives them a tremendous amount more flexibility in terms of the interior and how that configuration may work. So we'd be off just a foot slightly from the adjoining neighbor. They'd go back 3 feet instead of 4. But again, obviously, if 4 is the will of the board, it's what they would be willing to live with. The only other thing that two things actually we wanted to make clear. One is that irrespective of whether they go back 3 feet or 4 feet, they would still be taking out the full driveway that they're showing. So that would actually help the impervious situation even a little bit more. So they're not looking for that trade-off. They'll take out the amount of impervious they've already proposed. The only other clarification would be that if they do go back 3 or 4 feet, they may need to widen this thing a little. They wouldn't need relief for that.
No, they
but
wouldn't
we
need
just
relief
wanna-
from that.
Right, we just wanted to
And
make
we
that
also,
clear.
just to be clear, we wouldn't take, it's not like you'd see the addition all the way to the driveway here. We're not going to do that.
Right, they're just trying to get as
But
much
the thing is,
flexibility.
you could do that.
Right.
As long as you did not increase the impervious. So if you wound up taking more, you'd have to take more of the driveway out.
Right.
So I mean, when you start doing your drawings and you say, hey, we can do this, you can, that's a good option. Although I kind of like the look of next door. That L shape in the front kind of gives an old warm feeling as opposed to just a square box sitting on a piece of dirt. At least I think that, but that's
Right.
just me.
Yeah. And by going back just the 3 instead of 4, it gives them that flexibility to A, have more of that L, and B, to better, I think, locate the front door, which is now going to have to be closer into the corner notch.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, we're talking in discussions being bandied about. It's sort of a
You might.
What is being discussed is kind of a flexible addition, that they can't go towards the road any further than whatever a level is agreed upon, but that they can expand to go sideways. I assume you'd still want them to go down the 1% on impervious coverage.
Yes, that's kind of what I'm saying. Right, yes.
But as long as it went down the 1%,
Right.
and whatever the foot limit is, assuming that's where the board goes, then they'd be able to expand it.
Under what we're potentially proposing loosely here, this yellow shaded area is going to stay. So actually, the impervious coverage would probably go down further than 1% if we're taking 3 feet
but
off.
what we're saying is if your architect comes and your builder says, hey, you know what, we can get an extra foot here or there, all right, as long, you
wanna
need to
see the
maintain,
46 as
you
the
need to
minimum number.
maintain that
Right.
1%.
Yes.
So if
Absolutely.
it
I mean,
goes
that's
up-
why we put it in as
right,
a-
If it goes up, then you got to take more of the
Right.
asphalt
Yeah,
out.
understood.
Right.
And that's why we
Right.
put it in, to show a bit of a
Okay.
good faith effort on that.
Are you then suggesting, Mr. Chairman, that as long as they keep that down, that 1%, they could go all the way across the front of the house, provided they didn't go closer to the street?
Yeah, I think that would be a mistake, but yeah, they could in fact do that
We-
because
we
they
agree
would
I
be
with
don't
that.
able
have
to
any
do that.
intention to.
We won't be doing that. That's
Yeah,
not
I mean,
our.
I just want to make sure,
Right.
if
Yeah.
By
this is
right, they
approved,
would
I
have-
write the
they-
order
by right,
correctly.
they would have
Yeah.
be able to do that.
We were
Last
just
time
talking
I had
about like a
mistake
couple
on that.
feet out further, not the extension, because that wouldn't
So
That would
I-
interfere with another second-story window if they went all the way across.
Right, and,
that's-
Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
right. So the
I mean,
intention is to stay at the 46% impervious, and if
Not
by
that it's our
making it,
intention to give you design advice.
No, it's a fair point. I mean, it's actually a fair point that you bring up, because what you're talking about here is why, an extra foot or two makes a big difference here. If you go too far, then all of a sudden that window becomes both first floor and second floor becomes an issue, and you've got a whole nother set of design things. It's really got to be a just right size addition, which is why we originally proposed this size.
Questions? I'm kind of still stuck on keeping it even with the other one, unfortunately, just for me, and I'm only one vote, so, I mean, everybody else may say no to everything, or, I just think that keeping the uniformity works better, especially if you look down the block, and I think after you get it up, you'll be down next to your house and you say, hey, you know what, it does look better that everything is the same, because that's the reason why we have setbacks, so that when you look down a street, one house is in here and another house is over here, so that it doesn't look like a jigsaw puzzle as you look down the street. That's my opinion. Anyone add? Brad,
Yeah,
anyone
are you
want to add
voting-
to any of that?
No, actually, I'm fine with 3. I think it's enough.
Think 3's enough?
Yep. I think it's going to be enough where you're not going to notice it looking down the side. But I get
Noah, do you
your
have
point.
anything to add?
No, I mean, technically, I don't find that that there exists a non-self-imposed or self-created hardship here to justify variance. But given the fact that the neighbors seem to not only not object to it, but support it, and with the understanding that you're going to make it conform with the next door line, subject to the various limitations that the chairman and the solicitor have specified, I guess we ought to specify them very clearly on the record.
Yes, we will
To
specify.
frame this, then I would have no objection to it.
Okay.
As a strict constructionist, that's going pretty far.
We appreciate
You have
your
no idea.
constitutional flexibility.
Very good idea.
There are lawyers that aren't here tonight that are watching this at home and wondering what happened to me tonight.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to
We did.
have anything to say? Add? No?
Cora,
Okay.
did you vote?
I'm going to do this. I'll do this one.
Okay.
I would grant them the variance, the dimensional variance, as long as they stay even with next door, and that if they wanted to, they could make it wider across the front, but they need to maintain the 1% reduction in impervious on the lot. Did I
Can
miss
we
something?
clarify something?
Yep.
I mean, will that solve your problem if you have to knock 4 feet off? I mean, you said you wanted to get an extra foot. So you want to knock 3 feet off, right? Not 4? Is that what you
From our-
asked?
yeah,
You
we're-
want to be 25, you want to be 25.48.
I mean, it doesn't pay to give them a variance at all if it doesn't solve their
Right.
problem. So the question is, will anybody really be able to see the difference of a
Right.
foot, 50
I
feet or 60
think
feet away?
actually, it's, listen, as someone who's been thinking about this for months and months, and constantly every time he goes to the car, looks at his next door neighbor and tries to imagine it, hers is very slightly curved. I mean, just her plot line is just very slightly curved out. And so I do believe that the only person who's going to know about the foot difference is probably us and you guys. I don't think anyone is actually going to see that difference. As we talked about earlier, space is very hard to come by
Right.
here. Obviously throwing ourselves, onto you guys, we would
Okay,
love
I'll
to have
alter
it.
my thing. You cannot encroach any more than 25.48 feet in.
Okay.
You need to maintain a 25.48,
It's 4.8 or 4.3?
they're 4.8.
4.8, it's 5.3 on the right-hand side.
Right, it's cocked just the tiniest bit, so.
Okay, no closer than 25.48 feet to the front yard at any
Right,
point.
to the ultimate right
Ultimate
of way,
right-of-way.
where they measure from.
Yeah.
Okay? All right, and you cannot increase the impervious at
Beyond the
all. You must
46%.
decrease it by 1% or whatever
At
you
least
had on
1%.
here. 40, when you get done, the impervious must be 46%.
Or less, yeah.
Right, or
Yeah, it
less.
says 2,674 square feet,
Or less.
Yeah.
or less. On that basis, I'm in favor of it.
I'm in favor.
You're done.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
let me just read this back, okay? I get to write it, I want to read it back.
That's it, we appreciate
The grant is for front yard relief only. They can go no closer than 25.48 feet to the ultimate right-of-way. They cannot increase impervious and instead must go down by at least the 1% promised in the plan. Subject to that, they can widen the addition, but it can't be wider than the existing building.
Yes.
Yes,
Agreed?
agreed.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your
Great.
time.
Thank you,
Thank you.
gentlemen.
Yeah. And one other thing I want to add, John, they need to, should we change the A3 to reflect that?
To give
No,
you
I
an
don't think
updated,
we need to.
We need
updated
to?
survey plan that reflects
Yes, oh,
that.
you'll need to do that
For building permits.
Permits, yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
But I think the order will reflect the say, as shown on the plan,
Okay.
subject to the following conditions, and the conditions will spell all this out.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
Where
thanks.
is it? No, it's in there. No, it's going to go through the ordinance, he'll have it. That's why I asked him to use it now. Appeal 2877, applicants Radnor Fire Company and Metro PCS Pennsylvania LLC, property located at 121 South Wayne Avenue in Zone WBOD. Applicant seeks the following relief. 1, the grant of a use variance from Section 280-53.7 of the zoning code to allow the continued use of emergency services transmissions from a newly constructed tower, as well as the addition of a wireless telecommunications facility to be housed at the site of a proposed replacement tower. 2, dimensional variances from Section 280-164B of the zoning code to allow the existing lattice tower to be replaced by proposed monopole. Section 280-164B has set the minimum setback shall be maintained from all property lines at a distance equal to 75% of the structure's height, or 89.25, measuring to the top of the proposed whip antenna, feet from all property lines. The proposed replacement monopole will be 12 feet from the southernmost property line and 22 feet from the eastern property line. Number 3, applicant also applies for such other interpretations, waivers, and/or variances as may be ultimately required. Your turn.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Nicholas Cuchet here on behalf of the joint applicants, Radnor Fire Company of Wayne and Metro PCS. Sure, Metro PCS Pennsylvania LLC. Prior to proceeding, if I may, I have pre-marked exhibit packets, if I could hand those up at this time.
Okay, yes. Is anything that you have marked yet, or is this all, this is new? What about the application and the deeds and other things? Did you mark all them?
The application and the letter to Mr. Kachansky regarding U.S. Postal Service Form 3877 are
Okay.
So everything in the application is in this packet?
That's, yeah, it's incorporated by reference.
Oh, okay.
Which one's for the record?
Well, they're going to need both because the application will need to be in for the record, so we're going to have to label that as an exhibit. Are the plans that were submitted with the application incorporated in these physical papers, or do we have to put
Yes,
those?
no, Mr. Solicitor, they are incorporated as Exhibit A14.
So just to go through what's been submitted.
Correct.
We will not need these plans because they're already labeled in here.
That is correct.
Okay. We have an extension letter in the file from the last hearing, but I don't think that is treated as an exhibit. That's just an extension letter. The communications site lease agreement is the same as was submitted in the materials handed up as in A4 is the same as that?
Yes, that's correct.
So we don't need that. The photographs, are these photographs in the new packet?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so we don't need those. The license, a radio station authorization, is this in the materials?
Yes, it is, as Exhibit A7.
Okay. We have a report from Kenneth Foster and Associates. Is that in the materials that have been submitted?
Yes, it is, Exhibit A11.
Okay. We have this site location, several site location maps. Are these all in the materials?
The three propagation maps that are
The ones
colored
with
in
green.
white and green are part of the exhibit packet, Exhibits A8 through A10.
How about this one?
That is not, and we will not be using that this evening.
So that can go into the cost pile. Okay. This is the application which we should label A1.
Yes.
Okay. And the letter to Kevin Kachansky, I don't seem to have.
I have an extra copy, if I could hand that up.
Yes, if we could have that. Okay. Do you have more of these?
I have one more copy.
We need to get one to the board for the
Yes.
file.
I think they're missing from all the packets.
Yeah, I
Nick,
don't
there's-
see this.
There's no tab 1 or 2.
Well,
And
yeah,
and
tab
any of
1
these
and
packets
2
you just hand up.
Is the
handed up.
application, tab A1 is the application.
Right, but I'm saying the package that was just handed up
Yeah,
has
it doesn't-
numbered tabs.
This
has
is
no
just,
1 or 2.
this is just proof of a notice, I believe.
Yeah, as long as John is satisfied with what it contains, and we have one to put in the record, we don't
Yeah,
all
that
need
would-
those.
And the only thing we're missing, John, is A1, which is the application.
Which we already
I can put-
have.
Which I already have. And the letter to Kevin,
Yes.
do you have that so I can put that as the record?
I have an extra copy.
I need that one.
Sure.
Yeah.
I need it more than he does. Okay.
And just before okay, this is A1, A2, okay. We have a memorandum to the township by Metro PCS, which says that they'll require with FCC standards. Is this in the materials that have been handed up?
Yes, it is. That is Exhibit A12.
12. Then we have a screening report prepared by Metro PCS. Has that been included in the packet of materials?
Yes, there are two NEPA screening reports, Exhibits A17 and A18, respectively.
Okay. I think we have everything either as exhibited or discarded. Mr. Chairman, I think we're
Okay.
whenever you're ready.
Thank you. As noted, the subject property is owned by Radnor Fire Company, located at 121 South Wayne Avenue. The property is within the WBOD, the Wayne Business Overlay District, and is approximately .882 acres in area. It is improved with an existing firehouse and an existing 95-foot lattice tower with emergency services antennas attached thereto. The top to the emergency services whip antenna is 109 feet 3 inches. The lattice tower is housed within an existing fenced compound in the most southeastern portion of the property. Radnor Fire Company and Metro PCS both have significant coverage needs in this area of the township. The applicants propose the replacement of the existing lattice tower with a 104-foot 6-inch monopole, which would be 118 feet 6 inches to the top of the relocated emergency services whip antenna. The fire company proposes to place its antennas that are currently on the lattice tower to the top of the proposed monopole to increase emergency service coverage. Metro's installation would consist of the addition of 6 panel-style antennas that would be 2 per sector at 94 feet 4 inches, that is to the center line of the antennas. Further, Metro proposes the placement of 3 cabinets on a concrete pad and 1 cabinet on a utility backboard at the base of the proposed monopole within a 10-foot by 16 on a 10-foot and 16-foot concrete pad. The existing chain-linked fence, as previously noted, would be removed, and the new expanded compound would be surrounded by a proposed 6-foot high estate fence to match what is existing around the property and adjacent property. Both access and parking are proposed via the use of the existing parking lot, parking areas. As noted, we are seeking variance relief for continued or relocation of the emergency services antennas to a higher height on a new tower, as well as the telecommunications use. We would be presenting the testimony of 4 witnesses this evening. We would have a representative from the fire company here this evening to discuss the fire company's needs, and then we would have our site acquisition consultant, our site design expert, our radio frequency expert, and our telecommunications site design expert for the board. If the board would like, board's pleasure, we could have them all sworn in at once or as we go.
Let's do that. All right, it'll be easier.
You do solemnly swear or affirm testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And your name's one at a time.
Thomas Diamond, it's spelled D-Y-M-A-N-T.
Brian Popescu. Last name is P-O-P-E-A-C-U. First name is T-R-A-I-A-N.
Do you have a card? Okay, and next name?
John Wolstenham, spelled W-O-L-S-T-E-N-H-O-L-M-E.
Jonathan Jimenez, J-I-M-E-N-E-Z.
Sometimes it helps.
Thank you. The first witness I would call would be our fire company representative, Mr. John Jimenez. You good? Please state your name and business address for the record.
Jonathan Jimenez, 121 Southwind Avenue, Radnor Township, PA.
And in what capacity are you employed with the Radnor Fire Company?
Firefighter EMT communications chairman.
And what are your general duties in that position?
Responsible for the fire company's infrastructure, for the devices that alert the volunteers and career staff, along with the end user equipment that is used on a day-to-day purpose for firefighting and emergency services.
So you do have experience with regard to the emergency services communications equipment?
That's correct. I have a background in wireless technologies. I was a broadcast engineer for a number of years, and I currently work part-time for Motorola, came with an ICOM from a dealership in Reading.
And are you authorized to appear this evening on behalf of Radnor Fire Company?
That's correct. The board of directors, along with the president of the fire company, have approved and tasked me with the responsibility for this project.
And can you please describe for the board the status and location of the emergency services communications equipment at the Radnor Fire Company property?
The current 95-foot lattice tower provides a backup system for the fire company in times where the primary system, which is here in the property at the Township building, goes down. The backup means to dispatch the fire company is at the firehouse. Due to its size of the tower, the coverage that we get using the backup system is subpar. It is not the same coverage provided by the primary tower here at the Township building. Not only are we kind of in a valley there on South Main Avenue, but also the height of the tower is much smaller than the primary system here at the Township building. In effect, we are not able to alert as many volunteers when there's a call when we're on the backup system.
And John, do you happen to know roughly when this existing lattice tower was constructed?
I believe through the paperwork we researched, it was back in the 70s that we were able to determine.
And you noted that the backup system obviously is utilized when the primary is not functioning or down. Is that correct?
That's correct. There is a automatic process that occurs when the primary system goes down.
And how often, say, in a year, if you could, does that primary system go down?
A handful of times, we'll say between 4 and 6 times a year, with the most recent occurrence just a few months ago when a Verizon line was accidentally cut. It left our primary system out of service for approximately 3 weeks.
So if we could, let's discuss in a little more detail the effectiveness of the secondary or backup system.
The backup system, like I mentioned, has not only a reduced height, but also reduced power output as licensed by the Federal Communications Commission. In effect, the range of that signal leaving that tower is not as great as the one here at the Township building. And the cause of that is, like I said, where the volunteers live, where they commute to, whatever their day-to-day activities are, we're just not able to cover all of those areas using the backup system.
And roughly how many firefighters are affected at their residences at this time?
Approximately half a dozen, I would say, between 6 and 10. Again, volunteer fire companies, in a perfect world, everybody's at home, ready to go for the call, but these are volunteers who have lives. They're often at places of business, places of leisure, or perhaps out having dinner at the mall. So often those volunteers are not within Radnor Township, but outside of its boundaries.
And the Radnor Fire Company assists Montgomery County and Chester County, is that correct?
That's correct. The Radnor Fire Company is automatically sent to assist the Berwyn Fire Company in Chester County and the King of Prussia Fire Company and Sweetland Fire Companies in Montgomery County on an automatic basis day to day.
And in your opinion, would the increased height that is proposed this evening with the swap out and a new pole, would that alleviate many of the issues that you are having with the secondary system?
I believe it would, yes. The increased height would definitely help us, along with the construction of the new tower, would allow us to relocate some antennas that we've had to put on the rooftop unwillingly because we had nowhere else to put those additional antennas. So yes, the increased height in the new tower would definitely be an advantage to the fire company.
Let me ask you a quick question for clarification. Why couldn't you just, at this point in time, move the towers higher on the existing pole?
The current construction doesn't allow us. The light duty, light frame construction of the existing tower just does not allow the support of additional weight on that tower. We've also put the antennas as high as we could, and they're as high as we already can go right now.
Mr. Jimenez, so you're saying that the new tower will be stronger and can support more antennae?
Correct, yeah, sir.
And this is an antenna that goes back to the 70s. Have there been technological changes in the last 40 years that the new tower would be able to accommodate that the old tower cannot?
The tower itself is from the 70s, but the antennas on it are modern antennas.
So there's not a difference there, it's just getting them more of them and getting them higher.
Correct.
And Mr. Jimenez, did you happen to look at alternate locations for these antennas in the immediate area of the township?
We did. We tried the AT&T building on West Avenue. We were denied. We also tried the tower here. behind the township building for additional antennas, and that was also denied by the tower owner.
So in both instances, the tower owner would not allow the co-location?
Correct. We never even made the application phase. We were simply told verbally over the phone that no additional attachments were being allowed.
Who owns those towers? Who's,
The AT&T tower on West Avenue,
okay,
and then the tower behind here, the township building, which is owned by Comcast.
okay.
Now, had the fire company on their own looked into replacing the existing lattice tower to achieve the greater height?
We did do the research, and it was very cost prohibitive to the fire company. It was approximately 6 digits between design, construction. It was going to be a very costly venture for the fire company.
And the fire company was approached by Metro PCS to replace the existing lattice tower, is that correct?
That's correct.
And the emergency services antennas, both currently on the lattice tower and the ones that are on the roof, would be at the top, or have top billing, if you will, on the proposed new tower, correct?
Correct. That was part of the agreement between the fire company and Metro PCS. We felt, obviously, the need for public safety was a lot higher than the need for private telecommunication, and that was agreed upon between the two parties.
So there's an ironclad agreement that to the extent that there is no way to, in some technical or other instance, accommodate both the fire company and the public carrier, the fire company wins.
Correct. Yeah, the fire company is the priority on this construction.
And use.
That's correct.
Now, if this application were approved by the board, the monopole would be installed at no cost to the fire company, is that correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, if approved and installed, the ownership of the monopole upon completion would be transferred to the fire company, is that correct?
Correct. Again, in the lease agreement between the two organizations, that was agreed upon.
So if another carrier had a need in this area and looked to the new pole to co-locate, the fire company would embark on a lease with that company, is that correct?
That's correct.
And the fire company could tell them no.
Exactly right.
And Metro PCS will be paying the fire company a monthly rent, is that correct?
That is correct.
Who is responsible for the maintenance of the system?
Because the tower will be the property of the fire company will be responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of the tower.
Finally, in your opinion, do you feel that the increased height that would be afforded by the new tower would be in the best interest of the community in terms of health, safety, and welfare?
I do believe that's true. Again, the ability to not alert those volunteers once on the backup system has always been a problem for us. And we're hoping that with the possibility of this new tower, we will once again achieve what we cannot do right now, which is alert the same amount of volunteers using the primary system as with using the backup system.
Those are all the questions I have for Mr. Jimenez at this time.
Just one question. Is it anticipated that the rental stream will be more than the cost of maintaining the tower?
That's correct.
That's it.
The overall height of this tower, after everything's on?
Of the newly proposed tower, Mr. Chairman, that would be 118 feet, 6 inches. Roughly 9 feet higher than what is existing today to the top of both whip antennas.
The drawing that we have in front of us, I don't, this one here?
Yes, sir. That is a lease exhibit.
Right, the lease exhibit, that's not the tower?
No, I would refer you, Mr. Chairman, to the drawings that are noted in the exhibit packet as Exhibit A14 for the most recent and accurate. Yes, sir. And Mr. Chairman, if by chance you're looking for an elevation, they're on sheet Z2.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
If the board's finished with Mr. Jimenez, may I call the next witness?
Yeah.
Or
Brad, do you have any questions for Mr. Jimenez? Noah? Cora? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. My next witness would be our site acquisition consultant, Mr. Thomas Diamond. Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. Tom, please state your name and business address for the record.
Thomas Diamond, and 2699 Winding Road, Quakertown, PA.
And by whom are you employed?
Metro PCS.
And how long have you been in the telecommunications industry?
Since 1998.
And what are your job duties as they pertain to Metro PCS?
It is my job to locate sites that are needed by the company, that are detailed by the radio frequency engineer, and then secure a lease with a particular landlord, with whomever has the site that is appropriate for adding antennas or constructing a tower, and then assisting with drawings, zoning, all aspects basically from start to completion of a building permit.
And are you authorized this evening to appear on behalf of Metro PCS?
I am, yes.
And have you done so on prior occasions at municipal proceedings?
Yes, many times.
And can you please very briefly describe to the board the business engaged in by Metro PCS?
They're a new wireless carrier that has a slightly different model than the other carriers, and they are a discount carrier. They're trying to reduce the costs, the overall costs of wireless telephones, and they have moved into the Philadelphia area.
And similar to the other major carriers or providers, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Metro PCS is in the market to compete with those entities. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And like other cell phone companies, Metro PCS needs to develop its network for its technology to work. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And what strategy, if any, does Metro PCS employ in developing such a network?
Well, the easiest and the most logical is to use existing structures whenever possible. So it's my job then to locate within a given area any existing structures and approach those people. You know, at the same time, I approach the Township building and ask what they prefer as their ideal for such a thing. Add the two together and then try to come up with a primary candidate.
In this particular case, Metro PCS is looking to replace the Radnor Fire Company's existing lattice tower with a new monopole. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And the fire company would be or locate their antennas at the highest point on the tower. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the existing lattice tower is owned by the Radnor Fire Company, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And the property at issue is also owned by Radnor Fire Company. Is that correct?
It is, yes. We have a deed.
And I'm going to show you what has been marked as Exhibit A3. Can you identify that document, please, for the board?
Yes, that is the deed showing ownership of the property to the Radnor Fire Company.
Thank you. Are you familiar with the property, Mr. Diamond?
I am, yes.
And have you been out to the site and viewed the existing lattice tower?
Several times.
And where is the property located, generally?
121 South Paoli, South Wayne Avenue, I'm sorry.
And could you describe what one would see on the existing property and surrounding properties?
Well, the firehouse is there, a parking lot surrounding the firehouse, and then, of course, the lattice tower, which was the reason I identified the site. And on the lattice tower are several antennas. Also noted that there were antennas on the rooftop, and thought perhaps the fire company might do better having them on the tower rather than the rooftop.
And as noted previously, Metro PCS does have a current lease with the Radnor Fire Company to pursue all zoning approvals for this proposal. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I'm showing you what has been marked in the exhibit packet as Exhibit A4. Can you identify that document, please?
Yes, that is the communication site lease agreement between Metro PCS and the fire company.
And Mr. Diamond, you actually also have provided numerous pictures of the Radnor Fire Company property and adjacent properties, is that correct?
That is correct.
And those are noted as Exhibit A5, is that correct?
Yes.
If the board would like, it's the board's discretion, there are multiple pictures we do have a photo simulation that we will be going through later showing the existing and the new tower. However, if the board would like Mr. Diamond to go through each of these photos with the board, we can do that as well.
I think we know the site a lot better than Mr. Diamond knows it.
Understood.
Just one question. Where in this lease is the provision that the fire company gets priority?
First of all, in the lease exhibit, it's clear that all approvals need to come from the fire company. In other words, the fire company must approve any design before we can actually begin construction. But under permitted uses is basically describing, and just to clarify, we originally had intended a 150-foot monopole, which is why on the lease exhibit you saw a larger tower than what we've ultimately come to, but this was based on understanding the zoning codes completely and being able to use what we have. However, I don't know that there is a specific clause that's stating that the fire company gets priority, but the fire company does have the right to refuse any of the drawings. Basically, they have the right to either grant us the construction or disapproval. So they have number one. I mean, they are the primary.
What happens if there is an approval of a design and it turns out that there is a mistake and it's hurting the fire company's thing? Would the lessee would Metro PCS be required to adjust its facilities to give the fire company what they needed to?
Well, the agreement right from the start was the fire company has first precedent. They have the right to do what they need to do. We have essentially agreed to the height, the RAD center height that we have, and the Metro PCS engineers have determined that that is an acceptable height that we can utilize. So fire company is on top of the tower.
Previously, you mentioned that you locate the sites where it should be, right?
Yes.
For the PCA. Do you have some criteria, like 1 acre you have to have, 2 acres, or any?
Again, existing structures are the primary. When existing structures exist and they're strong enough to support our equipment, that would be our primary. The secondary is then to locate towers that we may be able to assist in making taller, or in this case, having approached the fire company, they were in the process of looking to do exactly what we were proposing to do, and it seemed like a perfect fit where we could help them out as well as they help us out.
As far as the safety issue, that is why I asked about the acreage.
There's a lot we have to talk about on that.
Okay.
I mean, let me ask you a question, Nick. We have a bunch of questions we're going to want to ask, and
Yes.
I'm not sure who's going to speak to which areas. For instance, let's say we had questions about the structure.
Yes.
And how the structure acts in certain circumstances and the support of the structure. Who would be your witness who would address those issues?
That would be Mr. Wolstenholme.
Okay. Now, let's say we had questions regarding the technology and whether there's other locations or facilities that could be used to serve the purpose of Metro PCS. Who would address those questions?
The technology questions would be Mr. Popescu, our RF engineer.
And on the issues of site, whether there are other sites available That would be Mr. Diamond? with the
Mr.
answer to
Diamond,
those
yes,
questions?
that will be coming up in his testimony.
I mean, maybe we ought to just lay out some of these factual questions now so that
Certainly.
each one can address
Can
them
address
as part
it
of his
instead
testimony.
of going back.
Yeah, and there may be some overlap.
Certainly.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, the first question I'd like to ask, and I know it's on the minds of some of the other board members also, has to do with the behavior of this structure. I have somewhere in the back of my mind that at least the old-fashioned lattice towers were designed to collapse in a certain way, should they collapse, that they fold in over each other and don't fall to their full length and as a radius on a big circle. And I'm assuming that's part of what the commissioners had in mind when they drafted the provision of the ordinance that not only limits the height to 120 feet, which we're not going to violate, but also relates the side yard to a ratio of 75% of the highest point in the tower. So at some point, we're going to want to hear about what happens if this falls down. It's not only important to us because of the residential properties. By the way, you missed the closest residential property in your photo projections, because the residential properties are actually on the other side of School Lane on top of the stores. There's new condos up there. Oh. And they're actually the closest residentially used properties, and they're within 200 feet of this tower, which is its own issue under the code. But we're going to want to talk about that because we have a gymnasium that used to be the old middle school Sulpizio gym, which is now like a community center, which is often filled with our children and basketball clinics and the like. And next to it is the new Radnor Middle School athletic fields, which are often filled with our children. So we really would like to understand a little bit about how that works mechanically and what kind of danger it may or may not pose. The other sets of questions have to do with, in Section 280-164, sub E, it talks about alternative locations and facilities and support structures. And there are enumerated items there. There are 7 of them. And we really need to have you address each one of those. Some will go to wireless technology issues. Some will go to other site issues. There'll be all kinds of different issues there. We need to have you speak to them because you may not build a new support structure unless you demonstrate each of these. So we want to, at some point, if you want to look them over and figure out who you're going to have address each one, we're going to want to hear testimony about that and have the opportunity to ask questions.
Certainly.
Okay. So that's
That's
it.
it, okay.
Yeah, and I guess my just looking at the lease a little bit, and John brought this up. I'm concerned about, the fire company or the township owning and being protected in case something happens, and just because they have the first right of refusal as to design doesn't necessarily mean they own the tower, which is what the inference that Mr. Jimenez said. Did I
Mr.
understand you
Jimenez,
right?
are you satisfied that you have secured this right in an enforceable way? And your solicitor has looked at all this?
Yeah, I guess the next thing is
it's not our lookout.
Right. It's not our job to be looking at that end of it, but it kind of plays into, as for me, the safety factor, because if something happens, who's going to be responsible for this thing? And ultimately, it's the taxpayers and potentially somebody getting hurt.
We did have the lease reviewed by the fire company solicitor.
This isn't the lease, though, right?
The lease agreement between.
This isn't it.
That is it.
That is it.
Well, it can't be because it says 150 feet. So there's things in here that don't pertain.
Again, that was the initial contact, and that was the initial lease, and we were hoping to build a 150-foot tower at that time. It's since become obvious that can't happen.
So this isn't the lease.
So
no,
that's the lease.
They're asking for less than they're required
Right,
to
okay.
under
Yeah,
the
it's
lease.
merely the
Their
leases.
application governs. The lease could say 2,000 feet, but the
Okay.
application governs as regard to that. And I did see
Yeah,
a
but the
provision-
lease specifically says that this is what they're going to build, and if they can't build it, then there is no lease. So they got to kind of,
Well,
I would think.
the question that I had, I mean, the board shouldn't get too far into the private contractual relationships between the fire company and the Metro PCS, and presumably they could make amendments or whatever as a cleanup once they've got the tower done, where it actually is, which I would presume they would do, because I would expect most leasing attorneys would do that. There was testimony that the fire company has a precedence over Metro PCS, and I, having flipped through the lease, couldn't find that, and Mr. Diamant indicated that while it might not be in the lease, that's the intention. And I would just simply make, to the extent that there is a public safety argument, it seems to me that the precedence of the fire company in terms of if there's two antennas and the fire company in one spot and the fire company needs that spot in order to properly do its job, that the Metro PCS would yield that spot to the fire company. That may be the deal. I'm just not seeing it in the lease.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. But I just want to make sure on a construction site, because one of the things that we're really worried about is if something happens to this tower. So I just want to make sure that we're protected as a township relative to that.
The township, assuming the township grants relief, the only thing they're entitled to build as far as the township is concerned is the height of the tower approved by the board. And it doesn't matter what the lease might offer something in excess. If they say 150 and you say 100, it's 100.
Right. Okay, anyone else to do any areas? Brad, it's your? No? Okay.
In the neighbors' interference.
They will, not right this, let them kind of go through their thing and then we'll get to you, okay?
Mr. Culler, in looking through the ordinance section that you had noted, I had looked through this previously, and I would like Mr. Diamond to address some of the issues, because actually some of these can be grouped together and answered together, if you will. I'm going to ask Mr. Diamond a few questions, and then we will tie them into the ordinance, and the board obviously may ask whatever questions they may of Mr. Diamond. Mr. Diamond, can you describe to the board what attempts, if any, were made to co-locate Metro's antennas on current existing structures that would meet, your general need criteria, such as height, structural capacity, things of that nature?
Certainly. The first was the obvious one, and that was the AT&T landline tower that's across the street. And that was the primary candidate, and in fact we explored it to the point that we could. We had actually done a design visit on the building, and I was inside the brick structure and looking up on the tower, and ultimately we could not come to an agreement with AT&T landline on that site, and that is what forced us to move over to auxiliary sites, if you will.
So it's your testimony that there were contractual issues that didn't allow you to co-locate on that particular site?
Yes, that, and they had also had requirements. They were, I guess one of the real big problems, they had a $5,000 a month minimum landline charge requirement, and this was well above what is considered the norm by any of the carriers, by anyone that's been in this business for any length of time. I've done a number of sites in the New York market, and the New York market typically is a more expensive market than the Philadelphia market, and what they were asking for was approximately 2.5 times the amount that the highest lease I've ever negotiated was, and essentially it did not lack, or there was no business reason to use this particular site. And subsequently, and forgive me if my memory is a little foggy, it's been several years now since this site was originally, since all of these sites were originally done here. But they subsequently haven't allowed other carriers to use that building, and that's something that I had learned from Jonathan. They approached AT&T after we had already done our design analysis and found that they no longer were allowing anyone on site. So again, the fire company became the primary, and it made sense because the fire company was looking for more height and it was an existing structure.
In terms of the Radnor ordinance, noting fees, costs, and contractual provisions, for those to be considered unreasonable per the ordinance, it is noted that those costs would need to exceed the cost for new construction of a tower. That is an unreasonable standard. We had discussed this. Assuming that AT&T would allow Metro to proceed with an installation, would those costs have exceeded the cost of the construction of a new tower?
Within a very short period of time, very much so, yes.
And were there other locations, other tall structures in the area that would have potentially satisfied Metro's coverage objectives?
There weren't, and it was actually easy to see that once you got on the rooftop of the AT&T building and looked around. Certainly this structure here is nearby. It's not very far away, and that was brought into the radio frequency engineers. The problem is that we've got other sites that are very nearby, and he can attest to that, and also the fact that we weren't able to get the height on this tower. But even if we could get the height, it's still too close to surrounding sites. The fire company has a much better centered site to would provide much better coverage.
And those were the only two existing tall structures that could possibly accommodate
That's correct.
the antennas, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
And Mr. Culler, in terms of number 7 in the
I
ordinance.
think that's a technical issue.
Yes, and that will be addressed by our RF engineer. I just wanted to make that clear. And our RF engineer will also expand upon this particular, the Township Tower, and why that wouldn't work for the coverage objective. Mr. Diamond, touching upon some of the general conditions of approval, if this application were approved by the board, would the applicants be willing to submit a periodic inspection of the facility by an independent engineer to verify the structural integrity and compliance with applicable federal, state, and local codes and regulations, and submit an inspection report to the township upon request?
We would, yes.
And would the applicants, or I'm sorry, would Metro PCS remove its antennas and equipment if their telecommunications site was not operated for a period of 12 consecutive months?
Yes, they would.
And could that be accomplished within 90 days of notice?
Yes.
And finally, does Metro PCS intend to place any signs or advertising on the tower or any of its equipment?
No, none.
That's all I have for Mr. Diamond at this time.
Who would speak to the issue of screening walls and fences and security systems? The design of all that? Would that be Mr. Diamond or someone else?
Mr. Wolstenholme.
Okay, then we'll get to that when he's up.
The next witness I would call, members of the board, is our radio frequency engineer, Mr. Traian Popescu. Traian, could you please state your name and business address for the record?
Sure. Traian Popescu. The business address is 510 Virginia Drive, Fort Washington, Pennsylvania. I am a senior radio frequency engineer with Metro PCS.
And can you briefly describe to the board your educational background?
Sure. I have an engineering degree in electrical engineering and a master's of business administration. I've been working in the wireless industry for over 19 years, and for many, many years I design and I optimize various markets with hundreds of cell sites.
We've reviewed the CV.
Yeah.
Anybody have any problems?
No, I don't have.
We accept him as an expert in the area.
Okay, thank you very much. Traian, it was noted by Mr. Diamond that Metro PCS looks to co-locate on existing structures whenever possible. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And I take it then you as a radio frequency engineer in building out the network cannot really pick and choose where to put your telecommunications facilities. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And why is that the case?
Most of the times we try to co-locate on existing structures. Actually, to give you a percentage, probably at least 95% of our what we call them cell sites, are located on existing structures.
And would this proposed location help Metro PCS satisfy its requirement to provide safe and reliable coverage for its customers?
Yes.
And the present application is seeking approval of the co-location of a potentially swapped-out tower at Radnor Fire Company, correct?
Yes.
And Metro PCS is licensed by the Federal Communications Commission, is that correct?
Yes.
And I'm showing you what has been marked as Exhibit A7. Can you identify that document, please?
Yes, this exhibit represents the FCC license for Metro PCS for the Northeast region.
And that covers Radnor Township, correct?
Yes.
And as part of his licensure, Metro PCS is expected to operate and maintain its telecommunications facilities in compliance with the FCC regulations.
Yes, that's correct.
And like its competitors, does Metro PCS, as a wireless provider, have some type of mandate set by the Federal Communications Commission?
Yes.
And what is that mandate?
The mandate is to provide reliable coverage in the area where they purchased the license.
And can you briefly describe to the board what reliable coverage is?
Sure. The definition of the reliable coverage is that when somebody is trying to initiate the call, that particular call should be able to connect to Metro PCS network, or in case the caller has the call, the ideal is to be able to hold the call while he's moving, and the quality of the voice should be reliable and decent, and the person should be able to hear well the person who's trying to call or reach.
Meeting that requirement now?
Yes, we do. We have a rate of drop calls of less than 1%. We have a blocking rate less than 2%. So every single percentage, every single parameter is over 95%.
Doing that without this tower?
Well, overall for the Philadelphia market, we call it, which lays down for the entire region, which means from the Lehigh Valley till the shore, till Wildwood in New Jersey. That's what it's called. That's for the average. These are the statistics for the average.
Where's the closest other tower to this one in this area? Where's PCS's next tower?
Let's look at the map.
Yes.
You can lay it on a table, then it'll show up on the screen so that people can see it as well as people at home.
Members of the board, this is marked in your exhibit packet as Exhibit A8. And that is Exhibit A9. In answering the chairman's question, can you just describe what this document is that we're looking at?
Sure. What I'm looking right now, I'm looking at, I ran a propagation analysis for the cell sites surrounding this proposed location, including this particular location if the application would be approved. For our database, this particular cell site was named PH0333-B, and we do have a cell site west of this location, which is named PH0708-A, and also an existing one named PH0059-A, and southeast is another cell site which is on air, which is PH0010A-A.
What's the difference, and what's the distance from each one of them?
I would say roughly 3 miles. You can look at the scale.
I'm kind of looking. What I'm trying to figure out is I guess Radnor is where the new one's proposed.
Yes, that one named PH033B.
Oh, this is that one up there, not the one over
That's the proposed
here.
one.
That's the proposed one. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And actually, Tryon, I know we're skipping around a bit, but I think to follow up on Mr. Cutler's question, I want to direct your attention to what is marked as Exhibit A10 in the board's packets. Is that a propagation plan of the existing coverage in this area?
Yes, it is.
And can you describe to the board what the colors represent?
Sure. What I did on this particular map, I ran the propagation of the surrounding sites without including the sites located in Radnor Township. So you may observe what will be the area covered by this particular site located on west of this proposed location. You can see what this particular cell site will cover, and the southeast, the new one. So we have a gap in this township which is supposed to be covered by the new proposed location.
So the white areas show a gap in coverage, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And the gap in coverage essentially is areas where Metro PCS does not have reliable coverage per the FCC, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
There's two other towers that are shown on this this
Three
map.
towers.
But there are two existing, right? Oh,
Three.
there's a
There's
third
three.
down there. Yeah.
They want to put a fourth tower.
What's the height of those towers?
I don't on top of my head, but I have my laptop, so if you'll need, I'll need to open my laptop and I'll give you the exact answer. I have the database in my laptop.
And we'll go to a datum like sea level, not, obviously, a tower on a hill doesn't have to be as high.
Well, just to give you an example, what I have right now in my database immediately, I can tell you at what location our antenna will be, our Metro PCS antenna is located, and what kind of structure is. More details, I have to dig in more. But in 5 minutes, I can give you the information as long as I turn on my laptop.
Well, why don't you do that when your testimony is done, and then you can...
Right, when someone else is up, that way you can...
Okay, sure.
Don't want to interfere with the continuity of your
Absolutely.
presentation. Any more than we already are.
And in that regard, just to take a quick step back, can you just describe to the board how these propagation plans are created?
Sure. Metro PCS is using one of the software used by most of the wireless carrier in the wireless industry. It's called Planet. And this is a theoretical propagation, how the signal will propagate if we use certain elements, like we put the antenna height, we use the antenna model, and we have inputted in the software the technical characteristic of the antennas, and based on all the elements, the power amplifier at the end, that's how the software depicts the propagation, the theoretical how the signal will propagate in a certain neighborhood with all these input conditions.
And you prepared these plans?
Yes, I did.
And what height for these antennas are being proposed this evening to the board?
For the proposed location, we are at 94 feet.
And in your opinion, as the radio frequency engineer, is that height the minimum height required to provide reliable coverage and achieve Metro's coverage objectives in this area?
Yes.
Now, trying, if we could, I want to go back one exhibit. Which is Exhibit A8. This exhibit essentially shows what the projected coverage would be if the proposed site were on air, if you will, correct?
Yes.
And can you describe to the board the coverage that this site would afford to Metro PCS?
Yeah, so if the board will approve us this site, which I name it PH0333-B, we will be able to make the coverage longer between the existing sites, and we'll have a continuous coverage on this portion. That's the main goal of this particular location. And also I want to mention that Metro has a unique model. They are trying to use unlimited coverage. Even now we're trying as much as we can to offer unlimited data, and especially the teenagers are using extensively Metro PCS services.
I don't know that that's a good argument for your cause. Don't tell us you're going to help our teenagers text more, please.
Based on this propagation study, Tryon, would a Metro PCS user be able to initiate and maintain a call within the proposed area at this point?
Yes.
That includes 911 calls, things
Absolutely.
of that nature?
What percentage of customers do you have, PCS, Metro PCS in this area?
I don't know exactly
No.
these questions.
Okay.
What we do as a company is Metro PCS, and generally Metro works with a lot of retailers. I'll have to ask questions to the colleagues
Okay.
from the marketing and sales department. I work for the engineering department.
Try and relatively speaking, what power levels are put out by these antennas, roughly?
Less than 1,500 watts per sector. Yeah, the composed power, it will be less than 15 watts per sector.
And does the FCC provide objective guidelines or limits for human exposure to the radio signals that are generated from these sites?
Yes, actually, the FCC regulates the limits.
And have you requested that a study be done to evaluate the cumulative effect of the antenna arrays at this particular site if approved?
Yes, Dr. Foster performed the study.
Yes, I'm showing you what is marked as Exhibit A11. Can you identify that document for the board, please?
Sure, that's the study performed by Dr. Kenneth Foster.
And have you reviewed this report?
Yes, I did.
And who is Dr. Kenneth Foster?
Dr. Kenneth Foster is a known radio frequency expert in this region and actually is known as nationwide. And he's a PhD in electromagnetic studies, and he's a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, and he has been written multiple books, articles, was at the point at Geneva, chaired the International Studies of Electromagnetics for 1 year. So he is probably the most prestigious person in the eastern part of the United States, or maybe in the country, in electromagnetic studies. Presently a professor at the University of Pennsylvania.
And can you describe to the board what Dr. Foster concludes in his report?
So we gave the input data to Dr. Foster. We told him what kind of antenna we hope to use, what will be the radiation center, and at the end his studies conclude that we will meet. So considering these input elements, at the end of the day, we will be less than 0.2% of the maximum limit admitted by FCC. So we're not going to interfere with. Will be less than 0.2% of the limits what FCC will let us use. Less than 0.2% of the FCC limits.
I'm looking at the key thing is the table on page 2. Is
Sure.
it not? And you're saying at ground level, this tower will have a maximum of less than 0.2% of FCC limits.
That's correct.
Then at any distance at 26 feet above ground level, it goes to 0.35%.
That's correct.
And more than 300 feet from the antenna, it goes up to 1.2%. Does that mean that you're at the top, you're floating in the air around 195 feet off the ground or something? How do you, I don't understand, any distance, it sounds like more, you end up multiplying the, is this just in the direct beam of the antenna? I don't understand the last entry on the table, because that seems to swallow up the other two.
Yeah, that's correct, but that's how Dr. Foster calculated. So if you need more details of the calculation, we'll probably have to bring Dr. Foster itself here to give you all the details.
I guess it relates to the distance from the point of emanation.
Yeah.
And the closer you get to where it's emanating from, the stronger the signal would be.
I've seen
That's
this.
generally true with things like magnetism and electricity. That
I've seen this in other zoning cases, and I think the problem with the last table might do, based on my experience, is if you're actually at the level above ground of the antenna, you're more likely to get emanations, and if you're lower than that or at ground level, I don't think the table... I think the bottom line of the report is that, assuming you toss out the top two, and take the worst case scenario set forth in the report, you're still only 1.2% of what's authorized of the FCC limits. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
I see that you provide the information 104 feet, not 118, for the second page in the bottom paragraph.
I think the top antennas, that's the fire company's antennas on top.
Oh, I mean the structure and
The full height is the fire company's whip or whatever it is on top.
I would point out this board is not authorized to regulate emissions or deny a tower on the basis of emissions if it complies with the FCC. So what they're doing is what practitioners normally do when you represent an applicant. They say the zoning board doesn't have authority to regulate, but wait a second, we're so far under you have nothing to worry about. And I think that's what this document is the role of this document in this. And having done a few of these, I've seen that. I mean, the emanations are lower than the FCC standards, and the FCC standard is actually one of the more protective standards that are out there.
That is correct, Mr. Solicitor. In fact, this report does also take into account the very negligible effect of the emergency services antennas, which are a different frequency altogether, but it is a cumulative effect.
But by the same token, I mean, if the board is satisfied that we're under the FCC limits, you know, it's out of our hands, and we maybe want to move on to something else.
Thank you. Tryon, I'm showing you what has been marked as Exhibit A12. A12. Can you identify that exhibit?
Sure. This particular exhibit testifies the fact that Metro PCS as a company will comply with all FCC requirements and with all FAA requirements. That includes the guidelines and the emission standards regarding to the use of the radio frequency spectrum. And we will also not, because we have a particular frequency band assigned to us by FCC, and FCC regulates all the frequency bands, and they are assigned to each carrier or company a particular frequency band. We will not interfere with any other applications, like emergency applications or any kind of applications, like any TV transmission stations, any radio stations, because we have our unique frequency band.
So to break down the non-interference memorandum that you prepared, Metro PCS's proposed facility will not interfere with emergency services, will it?
That's correct. No, will not interfere with any emergency services.
And Metro PCS's installation will not interfere with other telecommunications services in the area. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And Metro PCS's installation would not interfere with home electronics, such as televisions, radios, or handheld phones. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Again, we have a unique frequency band purchased from FCC. I'm sorry.
And are the operations of these facilities monitored regularly?
Yes, they are monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
So if there were to be a problem with the operation of the facility, would that be subject to detection?
Immediately, absolutely. We have what is called a NOC, Network Operations Center. They monitor 24 hours, 7 days a week, regardless if there are holidays or not. Every single cell site, the moment you have a problem, you'll see something turning from green to the big red, and the technician will alert, and somebody will take the prospective measure. Many times we can resolve remotely. Sometimes they'll have to dispatch a field technician who most of the time will just swap a card and take the bad card back and send it to the vendor.
And again, in your opinion as a radio frequency engineer for Metro PCS, would this particular proposed site at the proposed antenna heights meet Metro PCS's coverage objectives for this area?
Yes, that's correct. This particular location and height will allow us to cover much better and meet the requirements.
And I note there is, between the two exhibits, there is some overlap in the green or coverage areas. Is overlap a good thing?
When we design wireless networks, it's absolutely standard to overlap a little bit, so we won't have a gap in coverage. So the ideal case, we want to have a certain signal strength all the time. To give an example, outside we hope to have minus 95 dBm all the time. In buildings, we have to have the signal a little bit stronger because we have some loss. So it's absolutely normal to have an overlay, thing like two circles that overlays a little bit at the end, at the edge.
And following up on Mr. Cutler's original question or concern with regard to the alternate technologies, are there alternate technologies available to Metro PCS that would require or that would not require the use of a support structure?
I am not aware about any technology that would not require a support structure. We are using in another part of the market lower structures, distributed antenna systems that are lower than this height, but they will cover much smaller area.
So if you were to employ this DAS system,
distributed antenna system,
DAS system,
sure.
How many potential sites would you need at lower heights to achieve this coverage objective?
Probably I will need between 6 and 8 locations because those are just covering just small radius, probably 0.25 miles. And we employ them in area with very high density of population where the traffic usage is extremely high. So they just cover a couple of corners.
And they would generally be scattered around the subject site, is that correct?
Yes, it is, absolutely.
And most likely, in fact, would require zoning relief for each site, is that right?
Yes, again, the height will be lower, but probably we'll still need to come here in front of the board for each of them.
For the use, the
Yes.
permitted use of a
Yes,
telecommunication.
to get the approval.
That's all I have for Mr. Popescu at this time.
Why don't we take about a 10-minute break? I figure- Okay, we're ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, actually, I would actually call Mr. Popescu back. He has answers to your questions regarding the adjacent heights, the heights of the adjacent
Okay.
towers.
The first location identified at the site.
The
first location-
708, is you talking about?
Yes,
now?
708A. 708A has the approved height at 132 feet. What are the details would you need, sir? Do you need the address or anything else for this one? No. Okay. The second location, identified as P80059-A, has the approved radiation center of 113 feet. 113.
113.
That's in Radnor, can't go over 120.
Right.
And the third location, identified as P80010-A, has an approved radiation center of 80 feet.
I'm sorry, 80?
80.
Is that the one that's made look like a tree off the Blue Route? One of the ones that they disguise as a tree with fractal geometry?
I don't recall exactly, but the address is 555 Sproul Road in Radnor, PA, and the zip code is 19095.
Yeah, I think that's on Radnor Country Clubs, yeah.
Do you have the acreage for those sites? How much is the land area around the site?
I do not have this information with me, but
The information there?
no, but we can provide it later on because that will be another department. I have to go to another database. This information that I just provided was from my business laptop.
It's safe to say that the one that's on the Country Club property probably has a lot of open space around it.
I just want to see how we can relate to our site.
I do not have this information.
Thank you. The final witness I would be calling would be our telecommunications site designer, Mr. John Wolstenholme.
Excuse me, would you spell your name? Last name on the-
Sure, it's WOLSTENHOL, M as in Mary, E as in Edward.
And John, can you please give your business address for the record?
Sure, it's 3359 Durham Road, Suite 700, Doylestown, Pennsylvania, 18902.
And by whom are you employed?
Wolstenholme Associates.
And can you just briefly describe your educational background and experience in the wireless telecommunications industry?
Sure, I have a Bachelor of Science from Spring Garden College, and I have a Bachelor of Architecture from Drexel University. As far as business experience, I've
That's
worked-
okay. We
Have your CV.
we have it.
Okay.
I would offer Mr. Wolstenholme up as an expert in the field of telecommunications
Okay.
site design. Thank you. Mr. Wolstenholme, what has been your role with respect to this particular application?
Our firm was hired to take a look at the site and try to see how we can incorporate a new monopole tower into the given location to replace the existing fire company's tower and do so in a way that's going to be able to keep them on air and not impact any of the existing structures or parking area.
Have you been out to the property and viewed the existing tower?
I have been, yes.
And showing you what is marked as Exhibit A14 in the packet. Can you identify this document, please?
Sure. This is the zoning drawings prepared by our office, dated January 24th, I believe, 2011.
And just for continuity's sake, the plan that you were showing on the table, is that identical to the plan in the exhibit packets?
Yes, it is.
And does the plan adequately and accurately depict what is being proposed to the board this evening?
Yes, it does.
And can you please describe what the site plan shows?
Sure. Starting with Z1, which is the second sheet in the set, we're showing, starting at the top, we have the existing building, which is the community center that Mr. Cutler had referred to earlier. Immediately to the west of that, we have the rear parking lot that is between the community center and the existing firehouse. In the, I guess, the top right-hand corner of the site, which is the, I guess it would be the southeast corner, is the location of the existing 95-foot-high lattice tower and the proposed location of the new 104-foot, 6-inch-high monopole. Continuing towards the west, we have parking, and then we have a two-story firehouse in the front, and then at the bottom of the page, we have South Wayne Avenue.
Just a quick question here. You have the radius as 78 feet, 4.5-inch fall zone.
Correct.
That's not correct, though, right? 'Cause you haven't taken into consideration the fire companies.
That should be the height of the tower itself.
Well, isn't ours 75% of the highest point, and you're at 114 feet? And if you divide 75% by in the 78.25 or whatever, it comes to 104 feet, which is what yours are. Not, it doesn't take into consideration the fire companies' 20 feet or whatever they have.
Okay. The radius that we're showing on the drawings is for the tower height. It is not for the top of the antenna.
Yeah, but our ordinance calls for the highest thing on the pole, highest thing on a tower. You got to be within 75% of the highest point of the tower, which is your 104 feet or 94 feet plus their 18 feet?
14 feet.
Your whip channels, right? So you're at 114, by your 118.51 feet. So you got to be within 75%. The ordinance calls you for to be 75% of 118.51, which would be 88.875 radius.
Okay.
So these aren't the drawings that depict what's going to be there.
Well, the drawings do depict as far as the tower itself is concerned. If the fall zone was taken out to show the, I guess, encompass the 75% of the top of the whip, the location would not change of the structure, nor would it change what structures or existing parking or whatever else like that would be impacted. I mean, as I said, the existing buildings and athletic field to immediately to the south, none of that would change.
Yeah, I understand that, but you're presenting these as the drawings that depict what's going to be there, and in fact they aren't. So they would have to be modified at some point.
Well,
because if we give you a variance, it's going to be based on these drawings, and that would be erroneous. It wouldn't be right. I mean, it doesn't make any difference anyway, because you're looking for 22 feet on one side and 12 feet on the other. So you're appreciably less than what the dimensions need to fulfill it anyhow.
Okay, so but, I mean, when I'm stating that the drawings are accurate as far as what the structure will be, as what's depicted on sheet Z2, showing the top of the tower and the antenna height at 118, 6 inches, that is accurate as far as what would be, should this tower be approved by the board.
But it's not, see, we're interested in the fall zone. I mean, as long as you're below 120, which you are, that doesn't, it's irrelevant to us on the board because you're within what our ordinance calls for as maximum height for 120. The next thing is the fall zone is 75% of the maximum height. So you got to be within 75% of 118 and a half. Am I missing something?
Yeah, yes, correct. The radius is smaller than it should be. The radius
should be 88.875, I think. If it's 118.51 is the height, and you take 75% of that, I think it's, I don't know, 89 is close enough. I'll give you 89. I'll take the extra quarter inch.
Fair enough, yes. And Mr. Chairman, that's correct. That fall radius would be
Is erroneous. So this isn't,
revised.
so this Z1 isn't proper. It's got to be modified.
Correct.
Okay. That's what I was driving at.
Yes, that's correct. The fall zone radius needs to be modified as larger than it is by, I guess, roughly
About 10,
11
about
feet.
10 feet.
Yes, agreed. Mr. Wolstenholme, can you describe what Radnor Fire Company and Metro PCS are proposing this evening to the board?
Sure. If we go to the next page, which is Z2, in the bottom left-hand corner, detail 1, Z-2, what may be hard to see here on the screen, but there's in the southeast corner of the site, there's an existing lattice tower. The base of the tower is about 4 foot wide at each face, and there's a 8-foot square concrete pad. That tower is going to, if this board grants approval, would be replaced with a new monopole that the diameter at the base would be a 12-sided figure that from a dimensional standpoint is approximately the same as the base of the existing lattice tower. Immediately to the east is a 10-foot by 16-foot concrete pad that would have 3 refrigerator-sized cabinets and 1 smaller telephone cabinet mounted on a backboard. There would be a cable bridge connecting the cabinets to the base of the tower that would house the coax cables for the communication. Separating the existing, parking area from the new telecommunications site would be bollards to protect the base of the tower should any vehicle or whatever back into that area. There's an existing 6-foot-high estate fence that goes along the property boundary, and our intent is to propose another 6-foot-high estate fence to keep the character the same.
And Mr. Wolstenholme, are there particular standards that apply to the design and implementation of such a structure?
Yes, there is. There's a ANSI code, which is American National Standards Institute, and the Telecommunications Industry Association code standard 222 Rev G is the latest one, and that was in 2005. That code is referenced in an international building code that is recognized by Radnor Township as the code that any telecommunications facility, light poles that you see in parking lots, any tall, slender structures like this would fall into that category.
And how stringent are these standards?
They're very stringent. They follow 90-mile-an-hour wind speed and take into consideration wind gusts, et cetera.
And they also take into account sort of loading of ice, if you will?
That is correct. They are designed to have a structure take on 1 inch of ice, and when it's at that point, they degrade the wind speed down to 40 mile an hour.
And if the proposed tower is designed, built, and maintained in accordance with these standards that you've referenced, is there any practical concern regarding structural failure for such an installation?
Provided they're installed properly, there is no concern for that. There has been many of instances where, like a Hurricane Hugo was one, other tornadoes where the area of the storm structures were completely leveled, and yet the telecommunication sites were still not only standing but still operational.
And getting to the board's concerns and questions previously, these towers are not designed to fail, clearly, correct?
That is correct.
In the off chance that a tower such as the one proposed were to fail, how would it fail?
Okay, what they do is they have designed in, for easy math for me, let's just say the top of the tower is at 100 foot. What they have designed into it is that it's designed to handle the wind speeds I had mentioned earlier at 100 foot at 90 mile an hour sustained wind speeds. Should there be a failure where there was significantly higher wind speeds than what the code allowed during a tornado or other occurrence like that. What happens is the top third of the tower, let's say 30 foot in that instance I was giving, would kink over like a bendy straw would. It's designed to have a weak link in that part of the tower. So when it bends over like that, the effective loading area that the wind is hitting not only the structure but the antennas themselves is at a reduced height, and therefore there's a reduced stress onto the structure itself.
Does it fall off?
No, it does not.
Some kind of a hinge or something?
No, it's just essentially just the steel itself.
Like a crumple zone?
It essentially crumples, and essentially you would see a tower that is obviously distorted, and you'd see that there's a kink at the top, and as I said, that would collapse upon itself and still be part of the overall structure. It doesn't blow off like a branch does on a tree.
Mr. Wolfson, is the tower proposed, how does that in terms of resistance to wind and collapse and so forth compare with the tower that exists now?
That's a very good question. The tower that is there now was designed sometime prior to the 70s when it was installed. The codes are reevaluated every 3 years. In this instance, the last one that's in place has been in 2005. As structures, whether it's a building like this one or it's a telecommunications tower like this, they look at different scenarios through the different years and decide, hey, we've got to start raising the safety factor as time goes on for different structures. And so the new structure, the proposed monopole, I believe would have 40 years worth of experience and code revisions of safety built into it that the existing one did not have at the time it was built.
If the existing tower to collapse, would it likely collapse at a greater radius than the proposed tower?
I mean, it's
or is
it's
that you
hard
don't know? If you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say it's hard to say. I mean, how this structure would collapse. I can say that the new tower would be designed in a way that would be a safer structure, as far as because it's got all of those inherent capabilities designed into it.
Does this new tower have any kind of guide wires or backup?
No, there's no guide wires.
Okay. So that's all. So its entire ability to stand is based upon the integrity of the structure and the integrity of the foundation.
Correct. There's.
Do we have the geotechnical report that establishes the integrity of the underlying soils?
We do.
There was a geotechnical analysis performed at this location, and essentially it recommends that a caisson be drilled to a depth greater than 20 foot, but no greater than 30 foot, and the diameter of that would be determined by the tower designer as far as how large of diameter that it ultimately would be. But essentially an analysis was done, and that's another thing that it's hard to say the existing structure as far as, going back to your question, as far as was a geotech performed and all of those things, we know on this tower that it would have all of that built into the design of it.
Were you able to determine if that geotechnical report was filed with the township?
I don't believe, I spoke to Mr. Kachansky, I don't believe it was
I
officially.
mean, it is a requirement of the code. That's part of the application.
That would
They
be
must file
something, correct, that we would require at the building permit stage.
What's actually required, I think, with regard to the zoning approval, it's in, here, I have it. 166L1. I think.
You think we have him up here just because he's a pretty face?
It says plans for support structure shall include a soil report compliant with the standards, and it has a reference to the standards as amended to document and verify design specifications of the foundation of the support structure and required anchors if used. Now that's all part of the plans that have to be submitted as part of the application process. See, it says, look at the beginning, applicants shall meet the requirements of this section and provide the following information where applicable for the installation of a wireless communication facility. So it's part of what you have to do in order to seek this approval of this use. And you're asking for us to approve this use. So it does have to be done. Now, if you don't have it done, I mean, and if you handed it right now, obviously, we don't have the qualifications to review this. I guess the township engineer would look at it, or whomever he would think is the right person to delegate that to.
And speaking to the geotechnical report, I mean, the purpose for that is to now enable the tower designer to ensure that the foundation is designed properly to handle the given subsurface conditions of the soil in that location.
So the foundation holds up long enough for the thing to bend like my finger. If the foundation isn't good, it doesn't bend, the tower comes down.
Well, that's why a geotech is
the weakest link, right?
The weakest link.
That's what we're talking about. We want to make sure the weakest link is where it's supposed to be.
And that's where, as I said, when the tower itself is designed, that geotechnical analysis would be reviewed and taken into account, and that would be submitted with the building permit app.
But there's nothing keeping you from doing the geotechnical right now.
I can submit it right now, and if it were the board's pleasure and the board were to, say, approve this application, it could be a condition of approval for a full review of the geotechnical.
It would be. If
you want to hand one to Mr.
conditional
Kachanski,
based on Mr.
could you consult
Kachanski
the
and
township engineer about that? And
We would. As part of the normal process, the applicant, if they were to receive approval for the use, would be submitting a grading permit application, at which point we would be also looking at things from a zoning compliance prior to the issuance of building permits. At that point in time, we would expect that all of the supporting documentations for the other zoning items requirements for wireless communication facilities be met, including the geotechnical report. So there are other requirements.
I mean, it's unusual that it's in the zoning code as a requirement, but it is.
Yeah,
I think I'm going to take it from him tonight and make it one of his exhibits. At least then it's on record that it is in fact was presented at the zoning board hearing in compliance with the ordinance.
If we grant relief, it has to be conditional.
It'll be conditional on the
review and
engineer
approval.
reviewing this.
And approving it. I mean, I think
And
that's
approving
the piece of it, is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
it's not just, because we're not going, if that is an open zoning issue, it can't be closed by any approval
Right.
we give tonight,
No.
whether it's put into
It
the
has to
record
be
or
conditional on
submitted.
that if we even pass this.
We're forced into this issue for two reasons. First, because the code says you have to do it. And secondly, because this relates to this setback requirement that you're asking relief from.
Understood.
We're in the unenviable position of having to decide if we're putting any portion of our community at undue risk by approving something in a way that was contrary to what the commissioners envisioned when they passed this provision, this whole section of the code. So we can't ignore this issue, and what to make of the issue we can't tell you yet because we're not engineers, or at least we're not here in that capacity if any of us are engineers.
That's fair, Mr. Cutler, and understood. Just as noted, it is in the code, our reading of the code and applying, for the application and the process. Typically, these are handed in at the time of building permit if approved, but I understand the interpretation that this should be handed up with
We'll
the
make it
zoning packet.
A19. You have reserved, I assume that's what?
Yes, sir, exactly.
Okay, so we're going to make this A19.
Yeah, we put it into the record, but I think that, assuming it's approved.
Assuming it has to be,
it has to be approved, this has to have teeth in it. I mean, the township
contingent
engineer
on
has to
that,
be
the
approved.
engineering looking at this.
And approving it. I mean, I think you need to carve out that the engineer has to approve it, and if the engineer has issues with it, it's.
Yeah, but John, I don't think even if he had presented it at the time of the application, the engineer would have looked at it and we would be at the same boat. It just would not have, it would be A19 as opposed to us writing in A19.
Okay, well, if we get to an approval, tell me how you want to write that.
Okay.
If we get there.
I'll hand this up.
Yes. So if you want to mark your records, John, A19 is the geo, okay?
Mm-hmm.
A19 is the geotechnical, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Wolstenholme, could you please describe Metro's antenna array and how many antennas are proposed?
Sure. Looking at detail 2, Z2, which is on the right-hand side of the sheet, what we're showing in this elevation and is on the right-hand side the proposed 104-foot 6-inch monopole. And we don't typically show this, but immediately to the left we're showing to scale the existing lattice tower that will ultimately come down should this application be approved. And at 94 foot 4 inches is the center line of 6 panel-style antennas. They're about 56 inches in height, and they're about 3 inches deep and about 6 inches wide. So there's 6 of those creating a triangular shape if you were looking at it in plan. And immediately above that, at the top of the tower, are whip antennas that would be utilized by the fire company, and they are mounted at the top, which is 104 foot 6 inches. And then in the center, there is a whip antenna. As discussed earlier, it's a 14-foot high antenna that tops out at 118 foot 6 inches.
Question. Now, when you said, I think it was Diamond had mentioned that they had talked to and the fire company had asked Comcast as well as AT&T if they could use their towers. Now, what is the restrictions on a new carrier going to the fire company and saying, hey, we want to put our panels up there? Can they allow other carriers to put panels on this?
You're asking if the fire company will allow other panel
Yeah, since the fire company technically now owns this, right? I mean, at least I think we decided that the fire company owns
Well,
this.
they will on completion.
Right,
yeah.
upon completion. Let's say next year or 2 years from now, a new carrier comes into the neighborhood and goes to the fire company and say, hey, can we use this tower? Can we put our panels on your tower? Can they do that? Or are they restricted by the lease, or are they restricted by the height, or what can be put on this tower?
Somebody else may be better to speak than I as far as that, but my understanding is that the fire company has a right to allow other people to go on, but Mr. Jimenez might be able to speak better to that.
Metro allows them to negotiate.
Okay, I just wanted to, and again, I'm just kind of asking, because the same thing will happen. The reason why you can't put yours on AT&T's and the other ones, is the same thing going to happen here where it's just yours, and then someone's going to be here and say, well, you won't let us put our panels here, so we want to put another tower. So we're going to be back on the same circle that we are now.
Right, it's actually a Metro's benefit to have another carrier because that would help mitigate
Time.
You need a microphone.
It would be to Metro's benefit to have another carrier there. It's written in the lease that Metro would receive a certain sum to help mitigate the cost of the original installation. The AT&T landline thing was rather unusual in that it's landline, it's not the cell carrier.
Right.
And we've done many deals with AT&T wireless, but AT&T landline is a completely different situation.
What was the reason that Comcast wouldn't allow you to co-locate?
Well, that was actually more of a radio frequency situation in that it didn't allow the coverage that we wanted. It wasn't so much a matter of them not letting us go on
I
there.
mean, the fire company wanted to co-locate.
The
right?
fire company wanted.
Well, what
Why
reason
wouldn't
did they
let
give
do
you?
it?
They simply said no future attachments. That's all she would tell me. No future. And all we wanted to add was one.
They didn't claim interference or electrical.
Or structural, integrity. It was simply no future attachments. That's all they would tell me.
Doesn't sound like a smart move.
We tried. And again, answering your question, Mr. Chairman, yes, the fire company would allow future attachments from
Okay.
other carriers.
I guess I'm looking for that because if you said, if there was a thing in a clause where they couldn't, then someone's going to come in and have the same arguments that we're getting tonight.
Understood.
For future people. And
Yeah, we'd prefer not to have a forest of antennas in that beautiful downtown way.
Understood. And yes, very simply, this tower structurally allows for co-location, and the fire company would allow other carriers to co-locate if it suits their coverage objectives, as it does Metro's. John, can you describe how the antennas are connected to the cabinets at the base?
Sure. There is, running down the inside of the monopole, there will be 12 coax cables, probably about 1.25 inches diameter, that would run down through the inside of the monopole so it would not be visible from the exterior. And then, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a cable bridge that comes across horizontally that has a connection of all of the coax cables that drop into the top of the center cabinet. that's on the concrete pad. For the fire company, the coax cable would do the same thing. It would travel down the inside of the monopole, and it would, very similar to the existing tower, there's an underground conduit that's shown here on the plan that ties into the firehouse. The coax cable would travel in the same way under the parking area to their equipment room.
And you had mentioned earlier, but refresh the board's recollection, how large are the equipment cabinets that are proposed?
The 3 cabinets are approximately 36 inches square and about, I don't know, about 6 feet in height for the 3 of them.
And one of the points of relief are for setbacks due to the height, but dimensional variances, if you will, correct?
Correct.
And can you describe to the board the proximity of the proposed tower to the property lines?
Okay. The proposed tower, the center line of it, we're proposing to be 12 foot from the southern property line. And so that's this location in the plan. The property line is approximately the existing fence on top of a masonry wall. And directly to the east, this dashed line here is showing the existing tower, which is approximately 10 feet from the southern property line, and it's 12 feet from the eastern property line. So,
Excuse me, how high is that brick wall?
the brick walls, it varies in height. As the parking area starts to go down in grade, the height of the wall does increase as you get to the back. So the masonry wall, which is closest to the community center, is probably around 4 to 5 feet in height. And as it comes along the side here and as grade rises, it only goes up to about 12 inches or 18 inches in height. And as I said, there is a fence along the top of it.
And you got a 6-foot fence on top of that, right?
There's a 6-foot...
I'm kind of, so that there's nothing inside there that's going to exceed the height of the wall and the fence combined?
That is correct. There's nothing that would be higher than that, other than the tower itself.
Some issues we're going to need to talk about fences and walls. After you're done presenting your testimony, we'll need to talk to you about that.
Sure.
Okay.
You may need some other variances, or you may need to make some changes to your plans.
Okay.
We'll talk about that.
John, you said that if the wind is like 100 miles per hour, it's going to bend the top. What height?
It's approximately 1/3. So in this instance, it's about a 35-foot height from the top of the tower itself would be where that kinking point would take place.
Once it happens, the connection will go away, right?
The connection?
Yeah, because you said, the wiring going inside, it may break.
The coax cable may get damaged, but once again, that's designed in as a safety factor, and that's where the safety factor would overrule keeping the antennas operational at that point. But as I also mentioned earlier, there's been significant storms and tornadoes, et cetera, that monopoles had survived and stayed on air. The antennas themselves and the mounts for the antennas, they have a designed wind speed of 150 mile an hour. So should the top of that tower kink enough, without a doubt the coax cables on the inside would get potentially spliced or cut or crimped or whatever it may be.
And John, this site is proposed to be unmanned, is that correct?
That is correct.
And how often would the site be visited by technicians?
Typically, it would be every month, 2 months. Somebody would come out in like a sport utility type of a vehicle, or as Mr. Popescu had mentioned earlier, if at the knock an alarm would have sounded or indicated that there was a concern at the site and they couldn't fix it remotely, somebody would come out at that time.
And can you very briefly describe to the board access, technicians' access to the site and parking?
Sure. I'm going to go back to the site plan. The parking lot is open to South Wayne Avenue, and so a technician would drive their vehicle in and get as close as parking would permit to the tower itself. And then there is a locked man gate, 3 foot wide, that they would use to access into the compound.
Are there any signs proposed for this site?
No, there is not.
And
Except one would hope a keep out sign.
Well, there is I shouldn't say there's no signs. There's no signs advertised or anything else like that. There is a very small sign, probably about 8.5 by 11, that would have just an identifier on there indicating Metro PCS. In case of an emergency, call this phone number. So I shouldn't say no signage, but mainly just an identifier.
Identifying placard, if you will.
Correct.
And is any lighting proposed for this particular site?
There is no lighting on the tower proposed. However, there is a small light that is on top of the telco cabinet and power cabinet that would have a timer. So should a technician come out at nighttime, they would turn the light on, and it's set on a half-hour timer. So if they forgot to turn it off when they left, the longest that light would remain on would be a half hour from the time they had gotten there.
And per the ordinance, were photo simulations prepared for this proposal?
Yes, there was.
And were they prepared by you?
Yes, our office had prepared photo simulations.
And to be clear to the board, showing you what is marked as Exhibit A15. Are those the photo simulations you mentioned?
Yes, they are.
Dated December 14th, 2010?
Yes, they are.
And if you wouldn't mind, could you briefly go through the larger version of your exhibit with the board?
Okay. Unfortunately, the larger version doesn't have any map to it or any other notations, but I can walk through. Everybody probably knows the site very, very well. The first photo, which is in the top left-hand corner, is a photo of the front of the firehouse looking southeast on Wayne Avenue at the intersection of Schoolhouse. And that photograph is the existing conditions as it is today, where we have the firehouse in the foreground, and then we have the 95-foot-high lattice tower in the background with whip antennas located about 2/3 of the way up the tower. And then there's the 14-foot whip that's very, very difficult to see, but it's at the top of the tower. Immediately to the top right-hand corner of the exhibit, we did a simulation showing how the proposed monopole would appear should it be built. And once again, about 2/3 of the way up, we're showing the panel-style antennas for Metro PCS. There would be 6 of them. And then at the top would be the whip antennas utilized by the fire company. On the lower left-hand corner would be our photo number 2 as it corresponds in the photo simulation. And that is looking northeast towards the existing tower on Wayne at the intersection of Runnymede. And once again, it's the same tower. Immediately to the right is the proposed monopole, once again also taken at Wayne and Runnymede. And that's photo number 2 in our photo simulation. Okay, I'm going to flip this over. Okay, looking top left-hand corner again, this is photo number 3 as it corresponds in the simulation. Once again, showing the existing conditions on Wayne looking north, and this is at the intersection of Windmere. And as you can see in the top right-hand corner, you see the intersecting sign to give you a place location of where that photo is taken. Immediately to the right, which is in the top right-hand corner of the page here, we're once again showing the proposed monopole, and the same height. None of that has changed. On the bottom left, we're essentially at the parking lot of the school, and we are looking northwest. We're on Luella and Midland, and we're looking across the basketball court, and we have the baseball field in the foreground there. And here's the location of the existing lattice tower, and also in the right-hand side of the photograph is the existing AT&T tower which is on, is that Route 30? It goes across that front there. And in the photo immediately to the right, we have the proposed monopole once again in the center of the photo.
Now, what the code requires is that your presentation include a photorealistic representation of the facility as it would appear viewed from the closest residential property, which is across School Lane from the firehouse and the gym.
I
You
believe
don't have that perspective.
Well, I believe that the photo that I had, it was taken at that intersection with the residence to my back, which would have been, there's the small little park in front of the post office, and then that's where.
Now, this is on the same side of South Wayne Avenue as the firehouse, across School Lane. There are condos. There are a couple floors of condos, new condos. They park right there at School Lane, and they go up their entrance there. There's an elevator into their condos, and they are the closest residential properties.
Okay, so the residences that were right to my back in photo number 1, there's condos closer than that?
Yeah.
Okay,
In fact, within 200 feet of the proposed tower, which is another issue under the code. It's not only 75% of the height, but it's not supposed to be within 200 feet of a residentially used property.
When, Mr. Culler, if you don't mind, when were these condos established? You said they were
4 or 5 years ago. They're on top of a number of the stores that front on Lancaster Avenue on Route 30, but they park off of School Lane and they enter from there. It's the residence entrance. It's one way to get in, and if they park their cars, they go up that way. And most of them, if not all of them, have a view out the back toward the middle school as well as views out the front toward Wayne Presbyterian Church.
Well, as I said, I believe that, and obviously you know the area below better than I do. I had thought that when I took this photograph, we were satisfying that portion of the ordinance, being the closest residence.
Of course, there are no other residences anywhere near there.
Right.
So,
Those are the only ones.
I wasn't familiar, or I'm not familiar until, with those residences until tonight.
I mean, I'm satisfied that I know what it would look like out of there. And if this bothers anybody who lives in any of those condos, I suppose they're here tonight. But technically, that's what they're supposed to show. I'm in charge of technical things here. It's supposed to show a photo perspective from the. No, I'm not so sure that that's the kind. I think they're like in.
I know we provided the list to the zoning officer.
Those condos, yeah. We're
We'd have
banging
to take a
Olson
look at
on
that
those.
and see
Yeah,
specifically the addresses that were sent out.
yeah.
No, it's on south side of Lancaster. Wayne Hotel's on the north side of Lancaster. Another condo. Well, are you finished with the testimony? Because then we can talk about these other issues if you.
Just finally, and very briefly, a tow air report was prepared, is that correct?
that is correct.
And I'm showing you what is marked as Exhibit A16. Can you identify that document?
Sure, it's a tow air report. I have a date on here of March 25th, it looks like, and it is showing that there's no airports within 8 kilometers or 5 miles of the coordinates provided, and the structure does not require a registration with the FAA.
And finally, a NEPA screening report was prepared regarding the replacement of the tower, is that correct?
Yes, actually, there was, I understand, 2 different NEPAs prepared.
Correct. Exhibit A17 is the NEPA report regarding the replacement of the tower, is that correct?
That is correct, and it's dated February 9th, 2011.
And could you just very briefly describe to the board the ultimate conclusion in the report?
Sure. Their conclusion, which is found on, I guess, their cover letter, indicates that based upon the results of our assessment, it appears that the proposed installation will not adversely impact any of the criteria as outlined in 1.1307A, items 1 through 8, and preparation of environmental assessment for this criteria is not required.
And was a NEPA, pardon me, was a NEPA screening report prepared regarding the co-location of Metro PCS's proposed antennas?
Yes, and that report is dated, and that was also prepared by EBI, the same consulting company.
And that's Exhibit A18?
That is correct, and it's dated February 15th, 2011.
And what does that report conclude?
The report concluded the same. Should I read through that? It's the same conclusion as the other NEPA report.
I think that's fine. Finally, generally speaking, in your opinion, would the proposed use negatively impact the public health, safety, or welfare of the community?
No, I don't believe that it will. And as I mentioned earlier, I do believe that having a structure being built there with 40-year-old newer codes would be a benefit to the community.
And does the proposed use impact municipal services or have any impact on traffic?
No, it does not.
And does the proposed use affect the character of the neighborhood, in your opinion?
No, I do not believe that it does change it.
Do you believe that the addition of the proposed telecommunications facility to the proposed swapped-out tower is a suitable and appropriate use for this property?
I believe that it does, especially since it greatly enhances the notification to the fire department.
Is the proposal reasonable in terms of the logical, efficient, and economical extension of public services and facilities, such as emergency services or fire protection?
Yes, as I just mentioned, I think it does, enhances it.
And would the proposed use serve the best interests of the township, the convenience of the community, and the public welfare, in your opinion?
Yes, I do, and also it enhances the 911 capability. I don't know what the latest statistics are, but at one point they said it was as high as 70 or 80% of all emergency calls made with a cell phone, and I believe that this helps enhance that.
And finally, would the proposed facility be designed in accordance with all applicable safety and industry standards and will not endanger the safety and health of the persons or property immediately adjacent?
Yes, it will.
That's all I have for Mr. Wolstenholme.
Okay, so is that all the
That's your
testimony?
presentation?
That's correct.
Okay, now there's a few other issues we need to talk about because they're either going to require some modifications to your plans or some additional variances should the board wish to grant them. The first section I want to address you to is 280-53.14. This is a section of the Wayne Business Overlay District provisions. And it's the first sentence of that section I want to read to you. It says mechanical/electrical equipment mounted on the ground and areas for trash disposal shall be located in the rear of buildings, which you were doing, and screened from view with materials that are integral to the architecture of the building. Now keep in mind, we have to deal separately with a security issue and an aesthetic issue. Now this is an aesthetic issue, and it's talking about basically, in this case, a brick screening that would be compatible with the building. Now, if you turn to section 280-164, let me get the right one. There's a security issue there. 164H. And there, is that 164? I'm sorry, 166H. And there, it says support structures. Now we're talking about the tower. Before I'm talking about the cabinets, the electrical equipment on the ground. That has to be screened, compatible with the architecture of the building. Support structures shall be enclosed by a security fence not less than 6 feet in height and shall be equipped with an anti-climbing device. It says it may be waived provided the applicant that demonstrates alternative design techniques provided adequate protection. Then just under it in section I, it talks about a buffer planting strip, both as to a buffer and as to screening landscaping material. But in sub 3, it does allow for some alternative of a wall to the buffering material. So conceivably, you could do a wall that would screen the electronic equipment of whatever height, and then a fence either with that or separately around the tower as a security issue to keep people from climbing and getting into the tower.
Okay,
But both of those things are... required of the code?
I can speak to the tower first. The new proposed monopole, and I neglected to say this earlier, it is designed with anti-climb devices where the first 15 feet, there's no way to climb the structure. And unlike the way that the lattice towers are designed, just as it says like a lattice, you're able to, it acts like a ladder. And so the monopoles have pegs that stick out the sides of it where a technician or somebody with a climbing device, once they got up to the 15 feet, they would clip on with a harness, and then they would have climbing pegs to climb up to the top of the tower.
I think what they're talking about here is an anti-climbing device for the security fence.
Well, the way I was
It
reading
says
that is the structure itself.
A security fence not less than 6 feet in height and shall be equipped with. You're saying you think that's a separate thing than the fence?
Yes.
Anti-climbing on the tower?
Yes, in fact, anti-climbing devices
Okay.
on the tower are...
Well, if that's a reasonable interpretation, then strike the need for an anti-climbing device on the fence, but don't strike the need for the fence.
Understood.
You do need at least a 6-foot security fence around the tower, and you will need some kind of a brick wall around the equipment to screen it.
And in speaking with Mr. Diamond just now, Metro PCS and the fire company are amenable to a screening wall to match the existing brick of the fire company building.
So we're going to need some kind of an amended, like, landscaping plan or elevation to show that there.
No, they got to do a lot of changes to the drawings they issued us anyhow, because a lot of the dimensions are not correct. So whatever
Yeah,
they do,
there's
they'd
one
have
more-
to.
Let me throw one more at you, and that is you talked about the distance from the property lines to the center of the pole, which for zoning purposes has no relevance whatsoever. We measure the setback from the closest point of the structure or building to the relevant line. So if we're going to grant you the variance, we need to know the distances of the closest point of the pole to each of the relevant property lines, so that we can say you can come this close and no closer to this line and to that line.
Okay.
Measurements to the center don't mean anything.
The radius to the center, which would be the fall line.
Okay. What we had prepared up on the top of Z1, which is in the top right-hand corner, we took to what was being proposed by Metro PCS, and as far as it was encroaching to the rear yard and the side yard, and we took it down to 6 inches and 7 1/4 inches from the concrete pad. And so if we want to look at the tower itself, we would be able to modify that to show from the base of the tower and increases from 6 inches and 7 1/4 inches accordingly to about 8 feet.
We know you're not going to go 75% of the height, but we at least need to know what you're asking to do so that we can grant it specifically, should we grant it.
Okay.
That's all. I mean, right now, we don't have that information to say how far is it going to be and no closer. Now, the other issue with regard to the variances you asked for, like I said, it's not just the 75% issue. It's that the setback, it can't go within 200 feet
Of residents.
of a residence, and it is.
Right,
within 200
in fact,
feet.
and we were...
Now, I don't know what the distance is, but I guess we'll have to determine that.
Well, that would, I have to say, that would have to be advertised. That variance, and you don't want a Luke v. Cataldi problem with this approval. I think that, where I'm coming out is that to the extent there, are issues, they have 3 options. Conform with the code if possible, convince the board that it's not really a concern and that our interpretation is wrong, and see if assuming that can be done. Or if more variance relief is needed, you'll need to come back and get that advertised and identify it to the zoning officer, so that because otherwise you do have a Luke v. Cataldi problem if we proceed. I think, again, the surprise for you this evening is the knowledge that there are residences closer than you thought there were.
Well, that's correct. Yeah, we were clearly not aware of, or else that would have been one of our variances. Although we do have a catch-all in that, we
You
would
do have
request-
such,
Yeah, it says it on the bottom.
yeah, it does. They do have such other variances are needed.
Right.
So I guess maybe that
I
would
think that works.
work on that.
It's worked before, so I think.
No, I think I had forgotten. I saw that today earlier. I think they have a basket.
Okay.
With that said, Mr. Cutler, Mr. Chairman, in terms of revisions to the plans or, with an addition of perhaps, a landscaping or a cut sheet regarding the brick wall as proposed.
And the fence.
The fence.
Fence,
Wall zone.
And the wall height, right? Here's the wall height, the brick we want to.
Yeah, we're going to need to see that it's actually visibly screening those cabinets from
Right.
And
from
the
the
wall zone
sports
has to be-
fields, from, this township spent a lot of money creating that beautiful environment there at the school, and I don't think anybody wants to come to watch a game and look at the backs of refrigerators.
Understood. And, we will amend those plans accordingly. If the board were tagged, we can amend those plans, the fall zone and everything discussed this evening.
And then we can grant the relief, should we grant it, pending or referring to those
Right.
revised plans. Make it a lot more straightforward.
Mr. Cutler, I was also, I heard off the record from the audience that somebody who believes they should have gotten notice under the code may not have gotten
Well,
the
we'll find, when
notice.
they come up, we'll find out who they are and
but
what their distance is
If
from
there
it.
is a
Maybe they're-
notice
Maybe
issue-
they're outside that distance. Okay. Brad, do you have any questions? No, you have any other questions?
No, I
Not
think
now.
they've had their fill of my questions.
I don't think so. Never. They love you. Okay. Anyone in the audience have anything they want to add? It's your turn.
And ma'am, I'll swear you in first if you'll raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
And state your full name
Sure, it's Sue McFarland Metzger,
and spell that.
Metzger. And I live at 200 Midland Avenue, so I'm right across the playing field.
Okay.
So,
That was my first question, too.
Yeah.
How
so
close?
you-
Right.
kind of the
You know.
Yes.
Okay.
So first of all, yes, I did not get notice about this that I am aware of. And I think my husband can tell you I'm pretty particular with our mail.
No.
So I don't know, I
Okay,
might fall
not to
outside the
interrupt you.
range.
Would she be, why would she not get notice?
I would have to take a look at that. We do prepare the mailing labels for the applicants and give them the labels, so it would have fallen back on our department to prepare those labels, and we find the site within our database, and then we put an area or a circumference to that, and then it basically generates the labels for us. So
It's quite a distance. I don't know what
Yes,
radius.
you may be out because you're outside
We're
the
guessing-
radius.
You're
Probably
next to
about
this-
400 feet. I don't know if that's outside the
I didn't
radius.
get the address. I can look into those specific. I don't have that
You at the corner of
information.
Midland and Luella?
Yes,
North or south?
south,
What was the address?
200,
200?
200 Midland.
200 Midland.
Yeah, see, and you might be outside that, you know.
I might be, I know.
Yeah. You might
I
be
would
right
think
on the
just
lip.
with the, I guess with the visibility, I would have thought that
She's
we
got
would
the
have been
list.
notified.
Okay, I'm not to
but-
interrupt, just, okay.
Oh, no, that's fine. John, if you don't mind, I'm going to use your picture, photo number 2. There you go. I really like that picture just because I think it's really, to me, it's always been that kind of warming location in Wayne, that when you drive in, you get the visibility of 4 different church steeples, right from the Baptist and Episcopal Church to the Presbyterian Church, the Methodist Church. You've got what was the Township building, right? The firehouse, it's kind of a beautiful entree into our town of Wayne. And if you flip and look at the proposal after the installation, now what Wayne will have is a needle. And I just don't see Wayne having a needle in the middle of downtown. So aesthetically, I'm very passionate about this. I understand that there are these needs or requirements that have been made of emergency services. So all I'm asking is that the board really takes into consideration when they're looking at this appeal, are you willing to adulter the landscape or the visibility of the skyline with a needle for what? And if it's for emergency services, then let's talk about the emergency services and their needs specifically, and not the needs of a for-profit organization.
So that's kind of my first and most passionate belief, is that we're here for the emergency services. That should be our primary concern.
And that's ours as well.
Okay.
I mean, we would probably wouldn't be talking about this as long as we have, except that, the fire company has come and said, hey, this is something that will enhance the safety of potential, people who are caught in fires. And that's really the thing that, we're kind of torn between.
Okay.
We have turned down cell towers a number of times.
Right.
Because, we're not in the business to, satisfy their needs. Our needs are for the people.
Right.
But again, the fire company says, hey, this is something we might really, really need. It kind of puts us in a little different box. Would I
Sure.
rather not have this? Absolutely. But is it, if it saves one life because a fireman showed up that would not have shown up,
Right.
then, it's worth kind of messing up.
And my,
Do you
so
find
my
the
next question,
do you find the existing tower more aesthetically pleasing?
well, let's just put it this, what's the most unpleasing thing about Wayne is the AT&T tower. So we are just propagating
Is the
that
AT&T
ugliness.
tower a tree?
What, excuse me?
Is it a tree?
No.
Oh, no, the AT&T
It's
tower,
a big
you know.
brick tower.
You can't miss
It's a beautiful view from my kitchen window.
If you could just get rid of it, it would just really beautify the town. And we can't get rid of it. My point being is this decision that you're making is a decision that we won't be able to get rid of. So we are changing the skyline by making this choice. Again, I want to go back to emergency services because I think that's really important. And I want to ask or see if Jonathan could at least, I think, visually or give us a sense of what those 9 feet, so those additional 9 feet, that emergency services will be getting as a result of this tower, what does that quantify out to be? In other words, what's your reach beyond what your reach is currently to your volunteer firemen? And these are the volunteer firemen that are being reached 4 to 6 times a year, not all the time. And this, if I'm correct, is not impacting ambulatory care. This is just impacting reaching out to volunteer
No,
firemen.
evidently it
It is
impacts all.
ambulatory care?
It affects all services at the fire company. We use these paging systems for fire and ambulance, correct?
Okay. That wasn't clear because if you
It's only 6 times a year. That's pretty important if that 6th time is your house.
I'm not saying,
If
I'm
it's
just.
one time
I'm
a
just-
year and it's you, it's really important.
And I'm trying to quantify the distance that we're talking here. So, is it suddenly that somebody in media is not able to receive a call because of the 9? So what reach are we getting with those 9 feet?
Just beyond the borders of Radnor Township. So we're not talking to media, we're talking Tredyffrin Township.
Okay, and I guess visually, if we had that same map that you kind of had with Metro PC that kind of gave the reach, it'd be interesting to see what's our current reach right now without the 9 feet, and then what will our reach be with the 9 feet?
Here's a specific example. We have
Okay.
a volunteer who lives on Avonwood Road off of West Valley Road.
Mm-hmm.
On the backup system, he does not receive a page for an emergency.
Okay.
Just to give you a gauge.
A voice or a text page?
Voice page. The primary means of paging volunteers is by voice. Yes, we have text messaging, we have emails, but there's always a delay. Sometimes seconds, many times minutes. So the primary way, the most immediate activation is by voice, by a voice pager carried on the hip.
Okay, and they carry both voice and text pagers, is that correct?
Some do, some do not.
Okay.
The particular volunteer lives on Avonwood. His text pager does not work inside his residence.
Okay,
But that's a whole other issue
right.
from
Okay.
Delaware County.
So we have but again, I'm just trying to get to the point where I think we need to quantify
You have the same problem
it.
we have. And we're doing the same thing you're doing.
Right.
At least I am, and I can only speak for myself. My problem is, do I want this thing here? Probably not. And I like Wayne, and I like the way it looks, and but if I say no or I say yes, let's say I say no, and next week or next month or next year, there's a fire downtown and they hit a pager and they can't get guys and someone passes away, I'm going to feel really bad.
Oh,
And that's kind of where I am with this.
Sure.
I wish there was some other way of doing this, but
Well,
maybe
have we
someday they'll
exhausted all
figure it
those
out.
routes? I guess that's just my other question. I mean, I'm having a hard time thinking, is Comcast said no to the firehouse, or have they said no to Metro PCS and the firehouse co-locating
I think
their
I said both of
antennas?
them. Said no to both of them. I think the fire company went first.
And Comcast said absolutely not. And
No
we-
attachments. We explored it as an option. Logistically, it makes no sense to put your primary and backup on the same structure. This one behind here gets struck by lightning all the time.
Okay.
You would take out both systems in one strike.
Right.
So logistically, it
That
wouldn't make
makes
sense.
sense, right. And the AT&T said absolutely no?
Yeah, as a direct quote from the gentleman, he said as a service to the community, he didn't want to put any more antennas up there. That's what he felt. That's exactly what he told me.
I mean, it's already our eyesore. Can't we just,
Exactly.
I mean, I don't
That's-
understand why
that's
we
what he
can't take
told me.
advantage
Just
of
quoting what the gentleman told me.
existing
I think
structure.
it's a beautiful postmodern structure.
Postmodern, it's
Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder.
Yeah, absolutely. The other two issues that I just had is, it doesn't seem in the materials that I've been reading that there's anything that's going to constrain this tower once it is up, meaning how many more antennas will be added to it. Because really, the pole itself is one eyesore, and then each of those triangular, I get confused with the terms, but I'm going to call them antennae, or antennas, just add to the ugliness, right? So I see no restriction here. So if there's anything that we can do, what are we agreeing to? Are we agreeing to just the existing antenna, or are we also agreeing or allowing for as
Well,
many
they're gonna-
antenna as
yeah,
possible?
They're going to put the 6 panels, which
Right.
is Metro PCS.
But that's today, right?
Well, yeah, but we could say, that was why it was one of the questions I asked, is can someone else go on that tower?
Right.
Okay?
Or can they add more?
Right.
More?
And then you come to the issue is, do you put another set of 6 panels up there?
Right.
Or do you put another tower? I mean, which would you rather have at some point in time? I don't know. Do we restrict it and say you can only put one set of panels
I'm not
up
so
there?
sure we have the right to do that.
Yeah, I don't know we
Particularly
have the
since
right
there's a
to.
policy in the code towards co-location.
Yeah, co-location is actually favored under the code to prevent the proliferation
Maybe
of towers.
AT&T will come over and go on this tower and take
Right.
theirs down.
And our right is to make sure
Yeah,
they
that's
comply
not
with the. Our code doesn't regulate the number of antennas that can go on the tower. In fact, it encourages co-location. So we have no right to deal with that at all. We can't condition our approval on that.
Right, but that adds to, I mean, I ask you all to just drive down Route 30 and go right past, is it Whole Foods? And over on the right-hand side, you'll see the Metro PCS tower that we were talking about in that image before. And I don't know if you've seen it, but just drive down, keep your eye to the right by the train tracks, and you will see a very large monopole with a lot of antennae on it, and it's really unattractive. I mean, I just want you to take that visual, if you can do that.
Well, would you
that'd
be willing to
helpful.
give up your cell phone?
Would I be willing to give up my,
I
absolutely?
mean, we all want our cell phone service, but nobody wants a tower.
Well, I know, but my whole point is, does it need to be in the center of downtown Wayne? That's my concern.
Well, the point is the tower's already there, ma'am. It's there.
Right.
They just want to replace it with something that's more modern and a little bit higher.
And safer.
And
And
it's,
safer.
but it's lattice work, right? So it's a different structure. It's not.
This
it's
is a better
solid
structure.
It's
This is a better structure.
better.
Safer, better structural integrity,
Right, I'm talking aesthetically. So I'm just giving
modern,
an aesthetic viewpoint.
not with years of decay and whatever else has happened to something that old.
Right,
So, I mean, there's a lot of benefits to the community also.
right. Well, again, and that's why I'm kind of asking for this quantification. What's that
Right.
9 feet giving the emergency services that we're not aware
Well,
of?
evidently, the height
So-
is key.
I mean, they
think
wouldn't be
that-
joining in this
Yep.
application if it didn't.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not. I just was trying to get some
I trust
understanding as to what that
Mr.
means.
Jimenez that he knows his business, and he's saying this is a benefit, and they want it, and they need it, and our community will be safer. I
Right,
trust him to tell me that.
okay,
I don't think any of us can put our heads on his shoulders and preempt him there,
okay.
unless you
And
want
we've looked- and-
unless you want to introduce expert testimony that
No,
contradicts
well,
him.
I'm just want to make sure that we've looked at all
Yeah.
options, that's all. I'm just trying to understand that we've evaluated lots of different scenarios.
I mean,
because
they're only-
this is a long-term choice for the town.
The fire company's only in this because, A, they're going to get better emergency coverage on an alternate basis.
Mm-hmm.
B, they're going to get a better and more modern antenna than what they have now, and it won't need to be replaced anywhere near as soon.
Right,
And C, they're going to get some income out of it.
right.
Which
And I guess that-
helps us.
I mean, they're
And
not.
so my point being, if they are getting income, what is the income? And is that substantial enough to alter
Yeah,
our cityscape? And that's a question back to
Yeah,
you.
I don't think.
know what the
yeah, but
dollar amount is.
I don't think, at least I'm not looking at the amount of income, because whatever it is, it's not that much that it's going to affect a yes or no decision. I think the fact that it benefits us safer, it's a better product, and it just so happens to make some money too. I mean, I think that's it, just so happens, you know.
Okay.
I think the income part of it is the last thing on the totem pole.
Okay.
And again, as I mentioned before, the real issue here is, will it make Radnor residents safer because it's going to bring an extra EMT or an extra fire person to a scene that may have missed it before? That's the real issue that we're dealing with. I mean, there are some dimensional issues with this. You know, as you heard them all, you've been sitting here, you and your husband sitting here listening to them all night long. No, not the husband. The gentleman you sat next to, you know, it's supposed to be 75%, you know, radius, and they're 12 foot in one spot and 22 in another. So, you know, they're asking for appreciable concessions from this board. So what we got to decide is, you know, the concessions that we may or may not grant them, what are the benefits to the whole township? And that's kind of where we are. At least that's where I am.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm not against
Right.
doing what's right for the community as a whole.
Right.
I just want to make sure that we've looked at all options and we've considered this choice and the impact that it will have on downtown Wayne. And then the only other piece that concerns me a little bit is we just got flooded on Tuesday night, right? All this work that was done with the culvert and everything else.
Can't
we
blame that
still-
on the tower.
Excuse me, I'm not blaming that on the tower at all. All I have to say is it's currently on rocky base and ground, and you're going to substitute that with a 10 by 16 foot pad. So you're adding more concrete to an area. I know you roll your eyes, but
No,
there's a huge
listen,
drain right
you
there.
can ask anybody up here. There is nobody more crazy about impervious
Okay, well,
in this township than I am.
You're taking away impervious ground right next to a drain, right next to the field, and trust me, after Tuesday night's flooding, I mean, our street, the water was up, and I sit high on the street. The
I
water
live on
was all
Darby
the way
Creek.
up.
I live on
Why,
Darby Creek.
I saw that
Tell me
there-
about flood.
there
So
is a-
well, I'm just saying.
There is a
it came
storm
right
drain
across the
provided
field.
for on this site. They have put in a storm drain.
It's already
The
there.
problem is not the drain. The problem is the water table, and where does the water go?
Well-
That's the problem in downtown Wayne.
Yeah.
And
The drain's already there.
There isn't any of us who are going to solve that.
Okay.
Not
But
during my
you are
lifetime.
adding to the fact that there's now additional impervious space in that area that's already concreted.
I'm not so sure. If you take the present impervious and the impervious you're going to have, is there much difference?
It's on that drawing, isn't it? Don't you have a?
I'm not a civil engineer, but I've discussed this with numerous ones. It's a very, very, very de minimis increase on the amount of water increase from a compacted stone to a concrete surface. It's 160 square feet, which is the equivalent of a front stoop or a patio that somebody would have at their front door. That's the equivalent of how much impervious, if we want to go to the extreme of calling the increase.
The zoning calls for, it says, there's no change. Existing is 88.6%, which is below the required, and it says proposed is no change. At least the drawings say that.
But in reality, I mean, if you go there now, you'll see that there will be a change because right now there is
Well, evidently
ground.
what's there is not considered pervious.
Oh, though it is, okay.
Right. It's not considered a pervious surface, so it's being counted as 100% impervious. It's being counted
Is there
as 88.
vegetation there now, or is it a parking lot?
Stone.
It's compacted stone.
Stone,
Yeah.
and then the foundation itself, the
It says,
existing tower.
it says existing is 88.6%, right, and it says no change. So whatever is there is not going to increase or decrease at all, based on their drawings and their sealed plans. So some registered person, you know, architect and engineer has certified that. Now, if that's wrong, then
Board, from a zoning standpoint, what is there? The existing compound is a stone, crushed stone base, which would be considered impervious per the zoning ordinance. So changing crushed stone, compacted crushed stone to concrete from a zoning standpoint there's no change in impervious coverage.
okay.
And as far as I did hear some things regarding aesthetics, the applicant will be required to go to the design review board, and that's one of the things that they're going to be looking at, and can look at things of color of the poles to make it, you know, kind of fade into the skyline a little bit more and get into all of those types of things. So if they were successful in getting through the zoning hearing board, that'll be another set of meetings which the applicant will be required to go through.
Okay, good. I didn't know that. Thank you.
There's a lot of steps they still got to go, just
Okay.
because they get by us.
Is the
doesn't
design
mean-
review board up on the use of
and-
fractal
and
geometry to
and
camouflage
other-
things?
Some of the other boards are even more crazy than we are.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm just trying to get some answers, because like I said, this was thrown at us because we didn't know about it, so
Right.
it just kind of happened in the last week. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you for coming and sitting here all night.
It's funny you mentioned the storm Tuesday night. The tower was used many hours during that storm. We were using that tower.
Um,
Joe, raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
And your name, please?
Mark Weiss,
Spelled.
Weiss. 201 Midland Avenue, across the street from Sue. Not in the same house. Closer to the tower, too. Yes, we're all concerned about the safety issue as it relates to the fire department, but it does seem to be a matter of degree. Are we saying that
Excuse me, use the mic.
the reason for the monopole is so that you can reach out to volunteer firefighters in Radnor and Tredyffrin that you otherwise can't through a radio?
Correct. On the backup system, when the primary system here behind the township building goes down, or in events like Tuesday night, we use that tower at the firehouse. There are certain volunteers' residences that we cannot reach on that backup system. So the fire company on its own, before Metro PCS approached us, was going to replace the existing lattice tower with a monopole, being that the monopole is the least obtrusive, takes up the least amount of space on the property, things of that nature.
Well, I agree with Sue. We want every advantage when it comes to life-saving and equipment for Radnor firefighters, Radnor residents, and surrounding residents. But it's a 120-foot pole to get someone a mile or two away. I mean, what about a cell phone or text?
Emergency services do not
I mean,
work
we could
on-
lie a direct cable from the firehouse.
But you have to understand, volunteers don't live at the residences 24/7. We go
But
out,
then
we
they're
go places.
further away sometimes too, aren't they? Or are they
Or
not?
closer. Sometimes they're closer, but sometimes they're further
Closer
away.
is not a problem, but if they're 30 miles away, you wouldn't get them with this pole either.
No.
Right.
Correct.
So it's
Even
a
the
question
primary
of
system would
degree,
fit that.
and it's also a question of safety. It's not so much the impervious coverage that's a problem, in my view. You're right, in a floodway. I mean, everyone knows the water rushes down through that area. And the best example was the other night. I don't know what happens right at that site, but it's pretty critical there. At the firehouse, was there water that ran through the parking lot, and does it hit that?
Yeah, and it goes to the drain at the base of the existing tower.
But that whole drainage system is overwhelmed by the up-gradient flow of water.
Right,
from
and
the
the size of the diameter of the conduit leaving there, and that's the problem. The water has nowhere to go fast enough, and that's why it backs up.
So you're putting a 120-foot structure right in a river. And yes, they may be built safe and they have a crumple zone and all that, but I'd like to ask PCS whether one of these has ever toppled. Because if one has toppled, that's the place it's going to topple, right in that location.
I think that's why they're calling for a caisson. They use caissons to build bridges. So
Well, there's other alternatives too, though. There's a flagpole, isn't there, a stealth flagpole?
The flagpole structure works for cellular communication, does not work for public safety antennas. Unfortunately not. You cannot fit public safety antennas that close together inside of a flagpole.
Well, it would be this board's legacy to have a monopole in the middle of Wayne, and I don't think it would increase the margin of safety for the fire department. I think it would decrease it with the risk of kids in the gym and the field.
Yeah,
And it is, you see a picture from 200 feet away, but you need to see a picture from 50 feet away, which is where really life is happening on the street there. And it's pretty obtrusive. What's the radius of, or the circumference of a monopole?
They vary. The diameter at the base of this is probably going to be about 4.5 feet, and then it would taper up to the top, probably about 18 inches in diameter at the top.
But it sits on a concrete pad. That's how big?
The diameter of the concrete pad will probably be about 6 to 7 foot in diameter, and the concrete base that the existing lattice tower sits
Well,
on.
since your plans are inaccurate, I really don't know what the dimension is, because I've heard 94 feet high, 95 feet high, 90 feet high, 150 feet high, 104 feet high, 118 feet high.
No, the tower that they're going to build.
And I don't know whether
the Mono
the
tower is 94 feet high.
From where to where?
From the base to the top. Okay, the
top of the concrete to the top
Would you let the chair answer you?
The additional space, okay, is the space for the fire company, all right? Is the whip antennas that they're going to take off of the lattice tower that exists there now and then goes on top of the new tower. The additional extra feet that you say, the 94 feet to 104 feet, is the panels that go at the top of the Mono tower. They're so high, right? So that's where the extra 10 feet come from. And the additional feet after that is the fire company tower.
So how high is a proposed?
118 feet 6 inches.
From the top of concrete.
It cannot
to
be.
top.
It cannot be any higher than 120 feet because that's what the code requires.
Well, doesn't the buck stop right here? I mean, if it gets by zoning,
No.
then it's an administrative
Well,
matter.
no, the zoning. There's a lot of boards that it needs to go in front of. It's got to
But
go in front of
zoning-
design and other boards as well.
Is it a hardship? Isn't
Is it a
what's
is-
that issue is a hardship?
You know, that's what we're going to decide.
But
right?
isn't that a
but
matter
you got to
of- isn't that
remember,
a matter of
you
law?
know, our hardship has to be brought in is the fact that the fire company cannot reach all its members in critical times. Okay, and if perchance they can't get to an EMT person and you're having a heart attack, you're going to wish that tower was there. Okay?
And I would say that that's a lesser risk than that thing toppling.
No, I don't think
Given
so.
its location.
I think the chances of this toppling are pretty slim.
I hope you're right.
I think there's a greater chance of the existing lattice tower toppling before this thing topples.
But that seems wispy. It won't hurt anyone. It just
It won't hurt you.
just topple over. This is like a giant bowl that will take everything out in its path. Well,
I dare say that any small piece of the lattice tower weighs as much as a Little League aluminum baseball bat. And if you'd like to let somebody give you a hit with one of those bats, tell me it's not going to hurt. It's ridiculous.
Well, it hurt more of the monopole.
Please, let's not engage in sophistry.
Yes, I want to just make sure I asked. Can we get a copy of the application package so we see the exact relief that's needed? Is that, we're made part of the record here, can we be included in that correspondence? And can we get a submission package?
It's public
I don't know
record.
how to assess
It's on
the
public.
proposal.
If you go to the office tomorrow morning, they'll make a copy of it for you, I'm sure.
Well, they give them a right to examine it. They may have
Right.
to charge them to make them copies.
Oh, yeah, well, they're going to charge you if you want a copy, right?
Want our taxes to go up anymore, do you?
Well, I would agree with Sue that I think they're all, the alternatives should be considered.
Okay.
The flagpole, and in the end, I think, you fall right into the PCS kind of business model, and that is, we'll run our pole on the back of on the fire company, and where's the return? If there's a payment that's sufficient that benefits the fire company, that's one thing. But it doesn't sound like there is. It sounds like the best deal here is for PCS and not Radnor Fire or Radnor residents. So thank you.
Thank you.
Are we going to vote on this next meeting?
No, we're going to do it.
Even though they don't have the revised plans and things to?
You think you're going to make them come in and redo all new plans?
Well, I think there's some issues with the plans. I think there's some issues with the notice and whether the people who spoke tonight were entitled to notice. I don't think I want to see a procedurally defective decision, because then it could be overturned potentially indefinitely under
Okay,
Pennsylvania law.
so if anything, we should make them know what we require them to bring next time.
Yes.
And then be able to vote on it then with the correction.
Did the people in the condos get noticed? Do we know that?
I don't know. I'd have to take a look specifically. I noticed Midland was not on the list of addresses that we provided following
The
tonight's
condo
meeting.
people probably have Lancaster Avenue addresses, or are they School Lane addresses, do you know?
I don't know. I'd have to see the list again and then go back and verify where those properties are with respect to this.
See, there's a radius, so if they fall outside that radius,
Well, they're the closest residents, so if anybody gets notice, they would be entitled to notice.
what is the radius?
It is 500 feet.
500 feet?
They are definitely within 200 feet of this antenna.
500 feet's not very far. Anyone else have anything in the audience? No?
What I was going to say is if we're not going to vote until next time for all these reasons, if the neighbors want to get an expert, and I'm not just talking about somebody with an opinion, for God knows we all have opinions. I'm talking about an expert that says that this is not safe, that this is less safe than what's there, or show us something that is safer that people can do as a practical matter, we're not going to keep you from telling us about it. But let's not waste everybody's time. If you can't get that, it's going to cost money and you're going to have to find somebody. Because as far as we're concerned, we have people with credentials who've given us testimony, and doesn't sound unbelievable to me.
Yep. So what do we require them to make corrections? What are they correcting? They got to correct the
Fall zone.
The fall zone.
You have to show the
Okay.
distances
The
from
fences, hiding the refrigerators, and also
the setback, the distances from the closest point of the pole to each of the sidelines.
And somebody,
Should
I
be shown on the
think,
plan.
really needs a check from stem to stern, the notice requirement. Did everybody all residents or all properties within the 500 feet get the notice? Because I think that may not be the case. It certainly ought to make sure it's true, because you don't want a procedurally defective hearing.
And I hope the school district got the notice too. Because,
I'm going to look into that tonight to the extent that I can for the Midland Avenue residents. We will verify all the other addresses to make sure that everybody within 500 feet was notified.
And that's fair. We were given the labels by the township and noticed.
Yeah.
No, I'm not
Al-
putting
also-
this on you, but
But I agree with you.
But I'm
you
putting
might want
you-
to check on the picture,
Yeah.
the 200 feet, if that's a requirement, just to cover all your bases.
Yeah.
You know.
Mhm. Understood. So I'm clear. Mr. Kachansky will check on the notice issue in terms of revisions, revised fall zone, fences and wall,
Yep.
correct? And just so I'm clear, fencing, John, are you clear about fencing revisions? I don't want to leave here this evening without it being clear and waste everyone's time
Yep.
at the next
Yep.
meeting.
Fence has to be at least 6 feet high and entirely encompass the tower. Whether it's 3 feet from the tower or 5 feet, doesn't make a difference, it has to encompass the tower. The wall is for screening purposes, visual
Right.
screening purposes, and has to be compatible with the materials in the building, basically brick. So they're two separate issues.
And the wall is to be around the equipment.
Yes.
Yes.
Equipment
Any
only.
ground,
You got to screen,
ground-mounted
it
equipment.
specifically says you got to screen the equipment. Right. So if the equipment's 6 feet high, you have to screen it.
Okay, let's just say we
Or
built.
ask for a variance for
Okay.
that, which,
Which we're probably not going to be inclined to grant.
right, I guess is the best way of saying that.
Okay, let's just say we built a structure there that was a 6-foot-high masonry structure to match the firehouse. The two concerns I have is that it would now be blocking the drainage getting to the storm drain, so we'd have to hold that up to allow the water to pass underneath. The second concern I would
Well,
see
couldn't
with
there be
that-
a grating put in to allow water to pass through at the base of the wall or something? I'm sure that's doable.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying just a couple different concerns I would have with that. I mean,
You seem like a really clever person. I'm sure you can figure
We'll
that
come
out.
with something. All right, now, if we have a 6-foot-high masonry wall, would we still need to have a fence outside of that yet? Because that... and
Necessarily outside. Again, I don't know all the details of how you're designing this. The fence is for security to keep people from getting to the tower. That has to be at least 6 feet high. That's a security issue. The wall is a screening issue to keep people from seeing the electronic equipment that's on the ground, because you're putting all these cabinets on the ground.
That's the 166, those 7, you know, if you read them, you'll probably
Now,
understand.
how it lays out and whether you can have a fence here and a wall here, possibly that they're two separate things.
But the wall could act as the security to keep people out, though.
Well, the code specifies a fence. I mean, it's pretty easy to climb a wall. We're going to put broken glass on top. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
You know,
Do
what you'd want to do if you were protecting your valuables inside.
The less
And
things
protecting
we
your
have
children
to,
from getting in
I
there.
would think the less things we have to deal with, the better off you are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember, there's a bunch of kids playing a few feet away from this thing, to which this could be what they call an attractive nuisance. So keep that in mind. We don't want them to see it. We don't want them to think about it. We don't want them getting in there.
Okay.
Now, the board is okay with the proposed estate fencing that is not less than 6 feet, is that correct?
I don't have a problem with that as long as it's secure, yeah.
Yeah.
Understood, okay. Just wanted to be clear.
Nice fencing, very pretty.
And obviously, the measurements from the closest point of the tower to the respective property lines, correct? Those are the main revisions?
That's right. That and your radius.
Yes, yes.
Right, the radius of the fall radius.
Yep.
And including the nearest residences, because you're.
Yeah, that's the 200 feet.
200 feet.
Yep. So
I don't know if you're going to have, they don't really have it on the plan to show us the radius from this to those residences, but you're going to have to get somebody to measure that. Because we need to give you a variance.
We're going to put that on the plan.
Yeah.
And if that is the case, then so be it. But we will put that on the
I
plan.
really think you're going to find it's within 200 feet.
Well, if this is 75.
It's any residential used property, so it wouldn't even be the condo units themselves, the part where they park underneath, right
on
next
that-
to School Lane, that's
No.
part of it, that's within 200 feet.
No,
easily.
on that drawing, where is it? Where is those, where are they?
You know where the Lucky Duck toy store is, and all the Bang and Olufsen, all those stores?
Yes.
It's the second and third floor above that.
So it's towards Lancaster Avenue.
We're all connected. They have an entrance off of Lancaster, they have an entrance in the back where they park.
Is this Lancaster Avenue?
Looking at, what do you?
This is Lancaster Avenue here, right? On the bottom, where your hand is?
No, that's South Wayne Avenue.
Oh, it's South Wayne.
Lancaster Avenue is over here. It's parallel roughly to School Lane. You have a couple little shops here.
Is that 150, that dot you just put?
Yeah, this dot right here is at 164 is that dot.
Okay.
And then I'm going to take another one.
164 from where?
From the tower. That's 164.
Well, as soon as you cross School Lane, you're on the property.
So this dashed line right there is 200 foot. So is this one of the residences?
Well, that's where they, see, I don't know exactly where they are this way, you know. They may be right across from the tower there. So,
This dashed line I just drew on here, that's your 200 foot radius from the tower.
the way the code works is it says the, I think it says a residence or any property used for residential use. So even though it may not be one of the units that they live in, if it's part of the condo and that's where they park, that's part of the property used for residential use. So that's what's relevant, the property line, the closest point of that property line to the closest point of the tower is what's relevant. And I'm not sure exactly where on School Lane. I think, you see where that jog is from School Lane? If you go off of Wayne Avenue, and then it jogs to the left and then straightens out again? I think it's right after that jog. So I think it's, if you stood at the tower and looked down the line between the gym and the firehouse, I think you're going to see the back of those condos.
I can work with the applicant on providing some GIS data and aerial photograph, some property lines on it.
That would be great. Yeah, we'd appreciate that. We'll have that detail on the plan.
Okay. Well, you want to request a continuance, I guess? And
Give us the extension of
Extension of
time
time.
to hear and the 45 days thereafter from that hearing on the record that you would request that and grant
Yes,
that.
certainly. I request that on the record, an extension of time, and we do waive the time period and the 45-day period.
Okay. Yeah, I would make sure that, before the publication deadline, that you're, quite sure about who needs to get notice under our code.
Well, we'll be speaking to Mr. Kachansky
Yeah,
probably
well,
tomorrow.
Yeah, because time's running out, and the one thing I don't think you want to do is to not have that
piece of it totally squared away.
Right,
If there is an
agreed.
issue,
And,
assuming there is one.
What is the date of the next hearing?
Third Thursday of the month.
Third Thursday? Okay.
That's all I know. I can't go any higher than 3.
I believe the submission date is the 23rd, which would be next week. If there were things that need to be re-advertised, but any new submissions for
Are they going
the,
to need to advertise anything? I don't. I
Well,
think they
if
got
it
the
turns
catch-all.
out that those residents haven't gotten notice and should have, I mean, they've got to be within 500 feet, so we know that they should have. You know, you better be really careful about making sure that they understand that one of the variances is to put a tower within
Yeah, well,
200
that's,
feet of their
that's,
property.
you're going to check on that,
Yeah.
right? About
Yeah.
the notices and who
Yes.
gets them and who's
Correct.
supposed to get them?
Yeah. I think,
You want to err
Counselor,
on the side of caution.
you want to err on this, particularly with this Luke v. Cataldi stuff. If I were in your shoes, I'd err on the side of caution and just make sure it was advertised if there was any questions, so that you don't have that, assuming you do get a favorable decision. If you don't, doesn't matter, but if you do get a favorable decision, you don't want that appeal period to be indefinite.
You're talking in terms of deficient notice, Mr.
Yeah,
Solicitor?
and
Right.
whether it's to failure to conform to our ordinance in terms of who the mailing should be, or failure to disclose to the public. I know you've got a basket, but you might think about, if you know something else is there, do you want to re-advertise it with that, just to be sure?
Is it your responsibility to instruct the applicant how to advertise properly?
Excuse me, you want to please sit down? Thank you. No, there's the Township has, the advertising situation is purely a diameter thing. In other words, we advertise, by law, it says we need to advertise in a certain radius. Okay? If those people happen to be outside that radius,
Good.
they're not going to get advertised to, like you have. So it's.
And if they're in the radius and they don't get it, then they got a problem. So let the applicant.
Well, that's what we're if you were paying attention and not seething over there, you would have heard us ask Mr. Kachansky to please check on that. Right. Okay. So the situation has been solved because that's what we do. That's what Radnor Township does. That way, we are ensured that the people are contacted.
And in fairness to all parties, I have urged a continuance tonight because there were these issues. And having taken that position, I think it's incumbent on me to make sure that everybody, protestants and applicant, understand what is necessary, because that's why we're having the continuous.
Anything else? Are you okay with what you need?
Yes, we are.
And get
Thank
with Mr. Kachansky tomorrow and just iron all that out.
We certainly will. Thank you
Okay.
much.
No other
See you in
business.
June.
Meeting is adjourned.
See you
Thank
in June. Thank you.